I don't think we're quorate. Can I ask members who are waiting outside to enter the assembly? Before we move on with public business, I have given leave pursuant to standing orders to Sir Philip Balash to make a personal statement in the Assembly. That has not yet been reduced to type form, so it will be handed round to members by the end of the sitting, but Sir Philip will make his statement now.
Thank you, sir. In the report of the Independent Jersey Care Inquiry, I have been criticised for a sentence in my Liberation Day speech on the 9th of May 2008, where I stated, "All child abuse, wherever it happens, is scandalous, but it is the unjustified and remorseless denigration of Jersey and her people that is the real scandal." The context of the speech was important and will be remembered by all who were in the island in early 2008. But it was never my intention to compare the evil of child abuse with the scandalous misreporting of the Operation Rectangle investigation. I accept that, looking at the words in cold print in retrospect, the juxtaposition was unfortunate. I think, however, that very few people listening to that speech as a whole in Liberation Square would have imagined that I was asserting that child abuse was less important than the island's reputation. I certainly did not intend to give that impression. I have spent most of my professional life trying to do justice and bringing criminals, including child abusers, to book for their crimes. Anyone who knows me would know that I regard the abuse of children as one of the gravest of crimes. It is not a matter for comparison with the reputation of the island. I accept the panel's criticism that those words were ill-chosen, and I am sorry if they caused distress to anyone who heard them.
Very well. We now move on to a matter of public business. And the first matter of public business is the draft official publications, Amendment Number 2, Jersey Law, P32 of 2017, lodged by the Chief Minister, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Official Publications, Amendment Number 2, Jersey Law 2000, a law to amend further the Official Publications Jersey Law 1960. The states, subject to the sanction of Her Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Deputy Whitman's going to take this.
You are the rapporteur for this proposition. Very well. Yes, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. This law amendment will enable the Jersey Gazette to be published online rather than as it currently required by the Official Publications Jersey Law 1960, which necessitates it being published in one English language newspaper circulating in Jersey, with this being prescribed by order as the Jersey Evening Post. The aim of this amendment is to ensure that the arrangements for publishing official notices are cost-effective and efficient in a way of informing the islanders. While the amendment removes the legal requirement to publish the Gazette in a newspaper, parishes and government departments are still able to advertise in printed and online publications as they see fit. They could also use other ways of informing islanders, such as posting notices in the Central Library, parish halls and government buildings. This amendment is therefore about removing the obligation to publish the Gazette in one newspaper, creating an online Gazette instead, and the choices to what ways may be used to promote the news. I think that's enough to say about that. So I propose.
You propose the principles.
Yes, sir.
Are the principles seconded? Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. Now, some of you may have read my article in last night's Evening Post, and some of you may not. And for those who haven't, I was going to circulate a copy of my article, and then I thought, no, you can jolly well go out and they can jolly well go out and buy their own copy, or scrounge one from somebody else, or even look online. But the whole point is that, as Patrick Henry said, the liberties of a people never were, nor ever will be secure when the transactions of their rulers may be concealed from them. It is a duty of a government to communicate with its citizens, particularly if it wants to portray itself as a modern, transparent government. I am protesting at the high-handed way government has decided not to communicate with those of its citizenry who do not have access to computers, either through inclination or through lack of budget. I would like to know how much consultation there was. Was it suggested that there might be a degree of compromise on cost, and was a full cost-benefit analysis done? It is not just the cost of the Gazette in the Evening Post, but the cost of the alternative and additional methods of communicating with the public. In the report to the proposition, it talks of banners and posters. Well, anyone who stood for election knows how much those cost. And the state's supplying terminals in parish halls. So where are the costings? You know, we need a cost-benefit analysis before you start deciding to change everything. There is no evidence even that the government has even attempted to bargain with the JEP to get a reduction. In my article, I mentioned the economic justification for using a commercial publication to keep the citizenry informed, and that is the important principle that we must keep in mind. The whole point is that removing the Gazette from the JEP discriminates against a whole section of the population who are not online. Many of them, actually, are the older generation. If the parishes are not compelled to advertise in the Evening Post, will they advertise assemblies and parish matters anywhere but in the parish halls and on the church notice boards? The Law Officers Department states that no human rights issues are relevant in this case. Well, are they sure? Discrimination on this scale must be a human rights issue. I asked them to think about that. And suppose I haven't got a computer and I want to find out what is happening in the far-flung corners of St. Martin, and I don't drive. It's a day safari by bus from St. Brelard, and unless I can phone my uncle, Hedley Acobichon, who happens to live in St. Martin. As I've said, citizens have a right to know, and government has a duty to inform. Furthermore, the right to know is implicit in the right of free speech and expression. Secrecy can be justified only where the strictest requirement of public interest so demands. Ever since the days of the American Revolution, it has been recognized that a well-informed and educated citizenry is one of the best bastions against dictatorship. The Jersey Evening Post may not be a publication to everybody's taste, but it does serve the same valuable purpose as a central communications hub. As a central hub, it is accessible and its location known to all. It is an easily available document, electronically or in hard copy, and it provides a vital service for the government by ensuring that all the citizenry are kept informed. I urge members to reject this ill-thought-out proposition and to come back to the States with the evidence for the costings and a better plan rather than this rather rule-of-thumb effort that we've got in front of us. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Kevin Lewis.
Thank you, sir. I would echo everything that Senator Ferguson has just said, sir, and would reiterate that we have a duty to inform the people of Jersey exactly what is happening. It's not as if we're turning people away from parish halls and parish meetings at the moment, but this is something that, as has been said, it's not been well thought out. We have a duty to inform people exactly what is going on, and I would reiterate the fact that this works both ways. We need to inform the people of Jersey what's happening. Likewise, people purchase the JEP, Jersey Evening Post, because they want to know the news of the island and what's happening in the island. So it's in both our interests to come to possibly a new agreement that's equitable to both parties, even if it was run as an editorial in the JEP. People want to know what is happening in the island. And as has been said, a lot of people do not have computers, do not have access to the internet. So sadly, I will be voting against this proposition, sir. Thank you.
Deputy St Peter.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to raise 3 points that were raised by the Senator Ferguson previously. She raised the matters of concealment, discrimination and cost. So I would suggest that to choose one sole publication to disseminate information about the states of Jersey would in fact be a greater concealment and discrimination to the people we're trying to reach. It is much fairer to our society if we use the variety of methods we have at our fingertips nowadays to communicate. And also, it's that thus becomes a matter of cost. This evening, the good parishioners of St Peter will be asked to agree the constable's accounts for the forthcoming year. And if I remember correctly, £8,000 of those accounts are dedicated to advertising the parish's notices for the forthcoming year. On a rough estimation, that cost could be greatly reduced, sir, by employing on a part-time basis, for example, 2 mornings a week, somebody who could solely use social media, which is free for those who access it, and the parish website, which already exists, to upload the information that the parish wants to tell parishioners about. Also, that person could quite easily put together a database of those parishioners who wish to receive their information and notices in the post, and they could print out some letters to those people, because I don't imagine that they would number more than 100, 150 in a parish the size of St Peter perhaps, and they could issue those notices through traditional methods if people so required. Thus, we would be informing the public as they wish to be informed and reducing costs.
Deputy Norton.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Can I begin this, sir, by congratulating Help the Aged, who have a fantastic website, a brilliant website, a website that I believe might actually have been helped and rebranded by Lottery Money, a website which offers beginner and intermediate computer training, a website that offers training for beginners and intermediates on iPads, on Word, on emails, on Windows, and calls upon all of its silver surfers to enjoy the joys of online. And I'm sure that that can be of great help for them when they're looking up their Gazette in the future. Can I also point to the fact that there was a resounding no from this Assembly, from the amount of people that had not read Senator Ferguson's note that was in the Jersey Evening Post. Maybe some indication that maybe not so many are reading it, and perhaps if we're online, they might be able to read it. Of course, they can read the Jersey Evening Post online, which is what they actively promote more than anything else these days, because they know where their readership is going. And can I also point that Deputy Kevin Lewis is absolutely right, that parish halls are not brimming with people following a Gazette note. And there's a reason for that, because perhaps they just don't know about it, and perhaps they might know about it if it was also online. I think this is an entirely sensible proposition, and it's one that I, for one, will be supporting.
Make a correction, sir. I don't know which website the good deputy has been looking at, but the one I'm concerned with is Age Concern.
So may I just clarify that position, if I may, sir?
Well,
ageconcern.je is the website, I understand, and that is for Age Concern Jersey, so I don't think there could be any confusion of what they have on their website. I can happily pass those details on to the chairman of Age Concern.
let's draw that element to. Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? Deputy Masson.
Yes, just briefly, and again, I thank the JPs for providing perhaps the other side of the story, although I'm less grateful for the picture they decided to choose to use. Never mind. Yes, it's just 2 points which I want to pick up, which I did point out. This change does not prevent the JEP from actually printing any notices within its publication if it so deems the readership wants that information. All it does do is remove the costs and the taxpayer burden and the ratepayer burden. That's what it does. Not only that, but an advantage of this, if the plain English campaign were to get a hold of some of the notices that we have in the Gazette, I think perhaps a change to perhaps a more liberal approach to how these things are reported could be a benefit, because sometimes the language used in the Gazette is not always the most accessible to everyone. And finally, so something else which I want to support is because we need to change, and we also need to embrace kind of the digital way forward, the digital culture that we need to take root within our society. And whilst this isn't a seismic change, it is just one way in which this assembly can show that we want to move in that way, that it's something which we support and want to move, and therefore I'm entirely supportive of this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? Senator Rosen.
Thank you, sir. So this Assembly often speaks and has debates about targeting universal benefits or targeted benefits. And I have risen on a number of occasions to advance the case of targeted benefits as opposed to scattergun. So in the 19th century, 18th, 19th century, gazettes were the way that people got information, both in this jurisdiction and elsewhere. The printed newspaper was how people were informed, and that's where they got their information. Nowadays, we have a whole proliferation of different types of media, and it is the reality that newspapers around the world are falling in terms of distribution. I don't know what the actual distribution of the JEP is now. I know that there are claims of reaching 50,000 readers a day, but if you actually look at the official numbers, I think the circulation of the JEP, and I'll be obviously admonished by the JEP. Oh, they can see us now, sir, so perhaps they're not up in there, up in the gallery. I think the circulation of the JEP is in the region of 13,000 copies. So the time has come for us to reflect the changing society. This draft law and the preamble to this law does not prohibit the states of Jersey or the parochial authorities or other authorities that will be affected, like the JFSC and other statutory bodies, from placing information in the JEP and paying for it. Of course, as the previous speaker said, it does not also stop the JEP, who is supposed to be, they say on their front page, at the heart of island life. If they really think that information is important and that's going to improve the circulation of their newspapers, then they will print this information for nothing. I was on the planning committee when the JEP moved from the situation of printing planning applications for free to one of charging them. I regretted that additional cost to the public, and actually it doesn't really matter anymore because you can have a look at them on the very good website that the state has. So if Senator Ferguson, and I do understand Senator Ferguson's concerns about those people in our society who do not have internet use or smartphones, although I have to say that the statistics, when I last look at them, indicate that we are massively in advance of other jurisdictions in terms of, I don't dare use the word silver surfer, sir, because I'm getting a bit that way myself, but you know what I mean, sir. But the silver surfer generation is actually becoming actually much more online. And in Jersey, it is absolutely fantastic that we have such a online senior citizens generation. If there is an issue of the hard-to-reach groups that need to be dealt with, then they can be. And they can be through the good offices of the parishes and in other innovative ways, as the Deputy of St Peter has explained. Let us identify who are those perhaps 1,000 or 2,000 people maybe in Jersey who would wish to have a written, posted information if they need to. Let us find an appropriate way in order to make those people who do not have access to the internet have actually freely available information. Because one thing that hasn't been said, and my last two remarks are this. So the JP is not free. It costs. I think the cover price is 65 pence. 70 pence. I'm out of touch, sir, obviously. That's because I get it online. I pay now £14.99 a monthly subscription. But nevertheless, it comes at a cost. It's not free, sir. The Evening Standard is now free. And the other issue of cost, so let's not be in any sense delusional about having to pay for 65p. I think that's less than a stamp. Well, that's significant. That's twice as much, probably 3 times as much as a local stamp. So let's have actually some sense of proportion. If there are issues, if there are people that need to have information printed and sent to them, then we should arrange to do it in an organised way, but not in a scattergun approach. And the other issue, sir, is one of fairness and competition. It has been often said by other media organisations that this represents effectively an unfair subsidy for one media organisation versus another. And that, I know, is a challenge. I know that there's a challenge for the JEP, as in all media that rely on advertising, of how they actually fund their news gathering. And of course, the third estate and the media is vitally important. But a hidden subsidy of keeping the JEP alive by effectively subsidising this kind of information is, I'm afraid, not going to stop King Canute and the change in the media world that is upon us. And we really should be thinking about how we think about getting information and accurate information into the hands of islanders, not only just in terms of the Gazette, but in terms of what's going on in the political life and the all social life, the civic life of Jersey in a different way. So this is the removal of a legal, statutory, mandatory requirement of a bygone age. It is not appropriate for us to have such a compulsory requirement. Certainly, it is not just an issue for the costs of the states of Jersey, it is all the other organisations such as the JFSC, statutory authorities, the parishes, etc., that bear this cost. So we're not only talking about 100, 250,000, we're talking about a lot more in terms of what the total issue and the total costs that are borne by other organisations. And these issues have to be paid for. The Gazette is expensive, and we should effectively find a better, cheaper, and more accessible, dare I say it, free, not a 70p per day, ability for information to be, and I will be supporting the proposal.
Does another member wish to speak on the principles? Mr. Solicitor General?
Yes, so the Senator asked a question about the law officer's advice. So answering that question, in terms of human rights, there are obviously various rights that are protected by the human rights law, such as the right to life, right to a fair trial. The right to read the Jersey Evening Post is not amongst the protected rights. It may be that the Senator was thinking of the employment law and the age being a protected characteristic under the employment law. And whilst, yes, age is a protected characteristic under the employment law, I'm not sure that it arises in this context. This is not an employer-employee relationship, And in any event, looking at page 6 of the proposition and the paragraph that's four lines down, which begins nevertheless, which points out about the various use statistics for internet usage in Jersey. As I understand it, what is proposed by this proposition is that there will still be use of newspapers to bring information to the attention of all sections of the population, both young and old. So I am confident in the law officer's advice about human rights.
Deputy Fondry.
I would thank the Solicitor General, sir, and I apologise if it looked as if I was casting aspersions on the law officers.
Deputy Fondry. Yes.
Thank you, sir. I think my observation on this then, in fact, I'd like to just dwell on the paragraph that the Solicitor General has just pointed out, which says, nevertheless, whilst internet usage in Jersey is high, usage does vary according to age. And they quote social media is used by 92% of 16 to 34-year-olds. So Deputy Masson will be delighted to know he's in the majority. Whereas, but only by 19% of people over age 65. And I think that's my concern, because I fully support the whole principle that we're trying to go to digital technology and all that type of stuff. But, and it's all very well having these sort of glib remarks, oh yes, they can go out and learn how to use a computer. I'm thinking of the manpower returns, and I'll use the word debacle from about 2 years ago, where the system that was introduced was a complete disaster area. There were massive delays because actually they hadn't taken into account or made any allowance for people, including businesses, who did not have access to a computer. And you think, how can they do that? Well, actually, that's how people used to do it X decades ago, and they've kept going. Those people, of course, will no longer be a problem in about 30 years' time because they'll be dead. And obviously, of course, they don't matter. Don't think that works, actually. Because that's the message that people are starting to get, that if you do not have a computer, you do not matter. And I'll cite, I won't say who, but I'll talk about certainly an older member of the family, I should say perhaps, who used to subscribe to a particular club. They've all gone online. That goes, it's only sent by email now. They don't have email, they don't have a computer, they don't want a computer. Therefore, they're no longer a member of the club and they don't subscribe. Because the club is no longer able or does not have the facilities to put a stamp on an envelope and send out the stuff that they used to do 10 years ago. And that is my concern about how we deal with this, because we've got the classic example of manpower returns, and absolutely, as I said, 92% of whatever it is of the population, brilliant that we're so far advanced compared to the UK, as has been said. But how do we deal with those people who do not want a computer, or do not have a computer, or do not have the capability to learn how to use a computer in their, shall we say, last years? Because, for example, and it has been said, it's the people who are the stalwarts, the parishes, that sort of bedrock of the community, all that sort of stuff, because generally they are retired. For example, planning applications. Now, those are published weekly. And yes, I'm not going to focus on which medium they use. I regret, actually, some of the observations that have been made about this debate, because they seem to be focusing on the merits or otherwise of the Jersey Evening Post. Some of them probably fall in the otherwise category. But actually, that's a very convenient medium for getting it to their door, because it's delivered through the letterbox. People don't have to leave the house. Our members who are saying this, we've got to go digital, agree with that, expecting people who don't have computers to trot up every week to check the planning applications just in case something happens to appear in their area that might concern them. Does that make sense? To see, that's my concern, is that I fully understand and where we are going, but we've got to make allowance, and I've said this to the Chief Minister in the past, we've got to make practical allowance for the people who do not have computers. And I believe, I don't think it's 2,000 or 3,000, this is memory I hasten to add, I think it's 6,000 to 7,000 at least of people that we're talking about. And, you know, people say, oh yes, we've got to find another way, you know, and they said, if there are hard to reach groups, well, if people don't have computers, these will be in the hard to reach groups. Not an if, they are there. but there doesn't seem to be a mechanism to be thought about to deal with it. Now, hopefully, Deputy Wickenden is going to leap up and say all the things that I've got wrong at some point or other. But that's my concern on this, is that it is the right way to go, but that doesn't mean you should stop doing what we're doing. It's basically effectively a parallel run. It's an overlap, and you've got to have that transitional arrangement, or however you do it. But one's got to cater for, in my view, what I'm going to say is mainly the older residents of the island who do not have access to computers. But that can't be, oh, you can pop to the library, or you can pop to the parish hall. It's got to be convenient. Now, I know, in speaking with one other member, we were doing a back of fag packet calculation conversation the other day. If you send a leaflet once a week out to all the Gazette notices, sort of thing, through Pro Mail or whichever it is, that's probably going to cost us more than actually the cost we're incurring at the moment. That was a guess. It was a bit of a fag packet calculation. But, yeah, you can't base your decisions on that. But the point is we've got to know what mechanism is going to be in place to cater for those people who will not be IT connected and will never be. I think on that basis, I don't know which way I'll vote, but that's my main concern on this, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? If not, then I shall call Deputy Wickenden to respond.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for everyone that has taken part in this debate. I did read the JP article that Sarah Ferguson was in, and I thank her for... Senator Ferguson. And I thank her and Deputy Massol for their well-balanced views on either side of the argument. I also liked what the editor of the JEP said, and I agree with some of the things he said entirely. Effective government, good government, demands a flow of information so that people are aware of what's being done in their names. This is not just about the Council of Ministers engaging with islanders in a constructive conversation about how to secure the future we all want for Jersey. It is also about ensuring that we are well aware of planning applications, road closures, school announcements, waste services, the kind of stuff that really affects our day-to-day lives. I couldn't agree more. And I think that it's great that the editor of the JEP feels that that's a necessity for the islanders. And we will be sending the same notices from the Gazette to the JEP, as we always do. And there is nothing to stop, as Deputy Massol said, there is nothing to stop the editor of the JEP, who in his power can publish it for the betterment of the island, because he thinks that that's very important. Was there consultation? It was before this became in my area, sir. But there was conversations with the JEP. They have been aware that this was coming for over a year and a half, maybe more. They were aware. In fact, they put their prices up for us 6 months ago because they said we were getting a discount that we no longer can have. So it's already got more expensive for us. Not turning people away at the parish meetings is true, as Deputy Lewis of St Saviour's said. But maybe this would help bring people more into the parishes in some way as well, which cannot and cannot be a bad thing. I thank Murray Norton for his...
Deputy Norton.
Deputy Norton. Terribly sorry, sir.
3 strikes and you're out then.
Right. Deputy Norton, who talks about... there's some great work being done by the likes of Age Concern, Digital Jersey, the library, in trying to upskill the older generation that haven't grown up with technology. I think it's important to say that I think the statistics are 9 out of 10 adults in Jersey have a computer. That's great, and that's really quite leading in other places that you look around the world. But not everyone uses just a computer to access the internet and access information. People use phones now more than anything else, or tablets and iPads. I know my grandfather does. I know many others will say that their grandfathers, rather than having a PC with a keyboard, they will have a mobile device that they can access the internet from. So it's not just the PCs. So we need to be aware of that. They use remote controls, and that's easy. And it's just as easy with modern technology and smart devices these days. This proposition, though, is about a law change. Currently, we have a law that stipulates that we have to give money, taxpayers' money, ratepayers' money, to a private organisation in law. And that is not right. There is no place in current law to have it protecting or stipulating a private company for money of taxpayers and ratepayers. If we brought in a law today that said all government departments and parishes have to use this particular gardening service for all of their parks and gardens, then we wouldn't pass it. We just wouldn't stipulate one company to be the sole provider of the services that the government are asking for the betterment of the island. Also, this proposition doesn't stop departments or parishes from using printed media. And it's up to, and it's always been up to, and it's very important that each department and each parish uses the right medium to get the information to the right people. And that doesn't stop, which is why we've got savings of up to £100,000. It might not get near there, because it's right that we sometimes use printed mediums for this. I would rather see, for the betterment of the island, the Jersey Evening Post just publishing this because it's a community paper and this is good for the community, as the editor says. I think that planning advertisement, that's very important. I agree as much. Certainly being on the planning applications panel, I know how important that is. But you are required to put a sign up outside your house when you have planning in place. So it's not just digital, it will always be right next door to your house. With that, I think hopefully I've made all the points, and I really would like you to support me in this proposition. And with that, I ask for the appel.
The appel is called for. Like members not in the chamber to return to their seats. And I would ask the greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The principles have been adopted. 39 votes pour, 6 votes contre, no abstentions.
May I hear the sixth, please, sir?
Those voting contre, Senator Ferguson, the Connétable of St John, and Deputy of Grouville, Deputies Hilton, Lafondre, Kevin Lewis.
This matter falls within the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. Do you wish to?
No, thank you, sir.
How do you wish to propose the articles in second reading? Very well. You propose them en bloc?
Yes, sir.
Are they seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the articles en bloc? All those in favour of...
Sir?
I beg your pardon. Terribly sorry.
Thank you, sir. Just very briefly, sir. It's on page 7. The Chief Minister, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, has made his opinion very clear. He's not in favour of collective responsibility, yet collective responsibility has been invoked for this proposition, where all ministers and assistant ministers will be voting with this. And the second point I would like to make, sir, is we're all on electronic, yet we all have order papers in paper that not everyone can read for a great deal of time. So I would ask people to vote against it. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the articles? I'll call upon the rapporteur to respond.
Thank you, sir. I believe collective responsibility has to, because that's part of the code and rules for the Council of Ministers. It's, and again, not my choice, and I can't answer for the Chief Minister in that way, but again, it has to be, it's part of the code and of the Council of Ministers.
You call for the appel. That is called for. Invite any members not in the chamber to return to their seats. Ask greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the referee to close the voting. The articles are adopted en bloc, 38 votes pour, 6 votes contre, no abstentions. You propose the matter from the third reading? Would you please stand up and do so?
Yes, sir. En bloc, yes.
No. You wish
Yes.
to propose the matter from third reading?
Yes, I do, sir.
Is it seconded in third reading?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading?
Yes, please, sir.
Deputy Hilton.
Just very briefly, I just really wanted to express my concern, particularly from the planning point of view, that people need to know. It's all very well saying, oh, well, notices are put up outside premises, but how, we're not all spending our time sort of driving around the island looking for notices outside premises. So I have real concern that if the planning department or the panel decide that actually, well, we're going to stop advertising. I, for one, look at the plan. When it appears, I'm checking it to see what's happening in St Helier. So I have real concern about that. My other concern, briefly, is the parish of St Helier. I've expressed my concern previously about letting parishioners know about what's going on in the town hall. I just think this makes the situation even worse, especially as only 19% of over 65s are actually using social media. So I just wanted to put that on record. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on third reading? Call on Deputy Wilkins to respond.
I agree with the Deputy that we have to do everything in the right way. As far as notifications for planning, I believe that would be up to the planning department to choose what they were, and I would suggest the Deputy speaks to the planning minister to make sure that what his intentions are. As I said again, this proposition is not stopping anyone from using printed media. It will be up to the departments to choose how they want to interact. And with that, sir, I'm going to maintain the proposition and ask for the appel.
Call for the appel again. Very well. Appel is called for. I'm sure any members who were going to return to their seats have done so. I ask the greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The law is adopted in third reading. 37 votes pour, 6 votes contre, no abstention. Well, the next item is the draft health insurance performers list for general medical practitioners, amendment Jersey regulations lodged by the Minister for Health and Social Services. I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft health insurance performance list for general medical practitioners, amendment Jersey regulations 2000. The states, in pursuance of Article 27A of the Health Insurance Jersey Law 1967, and following consultation by the Minister for Health and Social Services in accordance with paragraph 13 of that article, have made the following regulations.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And this is a relatively minor amendment, but a very important amendment to the health insurance performance list for general medical practitioners, brackets Jersey Regulations 2014. And before starting, sir, I'd like to thank the Social Security Minister, and in particular the Social Security Minister's officers, in helping us bring this forward. So this is being proposed in order to allow qualified doctors, and I stress qualified doctors, to further train as GPs, to be able to prescribe and to be able to claim the medical benefit whilst attached to a local GP practice. They will be supervised, sir, by the doctors in the practice, but overseen by the Wessex Deanery of Health Education England. The regulations currently state that any medical practitioner in general medical practice has to be on the performers list if they are to be permitted to access the health insurance fund for the purposes of claiming rebates for consultations and prescription fees. At present, there is no provision for qualified doctors who wish to further qualify as GPs, known as Foundation Year 2 trainees and speciality trainees, to be on that list. Therefore, sir, there is a need to change the regulations. But just before going on, sir, I'd like to say a little bit more about the two groups of doctors referred to in this amendment. The first group, FY2s, doctors in their second year of a foundation programme that occurs after they have qualified as a doctor and places them in a series of accredited posts to give a general postgraduate medical grounding. Such posts include hospital and community placements with trainers that have met HEE standards. And ST2s, doctors who have succeeded in their application to join a training programme to obtain a Certificate of Completed Training, CCT, in general practice. The first year usually involves 2 6-month hospital posts and year 2, 6 months in a GP surgery and 6 months in a hospital, with a final third year based in a UK GP surgery. So we are aware that we have requests from trainees to undertake GP placement on the island with a view to becoming Jersey GPs upon completion of training. There are also a number of GP practices that are keen to play a role in such training activities, but the inability to access the Health Insurance Fund rebate has effectively prevented this up to now. Trainees will be monitored. They will be coached both educationally and by clinical supervisors who will review their academic progress and the quality of the patient care provided. Trainees will always be under the supervision of their GP trainer, who will either be in the room or review the clinical records or conduct discussions on learning afterwards. This initiative will help to develop Jersey's medical educational ethos and grant wider exposure to our unique healthcare system, which in turn will help to attract both trainees and GP trainers to the island. Sir, on that basis, I maintain the principles.
Are the principles seconded? Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Very well. Those in favour of supporting the principles kindly show. Those against? The principles are adopted. How do you wish to do? Does the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel wish to scrutinise this matter?
No, sir.
How do you wish to take the regulations, Minister, in second reading?
Sir, can I test the mood of the Assembly and take them en bloc?
Are they seconded en bloc? Does any member wish to speak to the regulations? All those in favour of adopting the regulations kindly show. Those against? The regulations are adopted in second reading. Do you propose the matter in third reading, then, sir?
Yes, sir.
They seconded in third reading. Does any member wish to speak in third reading? You ask the appel. The appel is called for. Invite any members of the Assembly to return to their seats. I'll ask the greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The regulations are adopted in third reading. 32 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions. The next item is the draft States of Jersey Transfer of Functions number 9, Health and Social Services to Environment, Jersey Regulations, lodged by the Chief Minister, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft States of Jersey Transfer of Functions number 9, Health and Social Services to Environment, Jersey Regulations 2000. The states, in pursuance of Article 29 of the States of Jersey Law 2005, have made the following regulations.
So I wonder if I could ask the Health Minister to act as rapporteur. Thank you.
Very well, Minister.
Thanks, sir. Sir, this proposition proposes that all relative legislative functions administered by the Environmental Health Team now transfer from my department to the Minister of Environment. In particular, sir, these regulations transfer the Food Safety Jersey Law, the Statutory Nuisances Jersey Law, to the Minister for the Environment. Environmental Health will continue to liaise, obviously, with my department, particularly around broader public health matters and smoking regulations. But sir, this move represents a culmination of a process that began early in 2016, when the budget for environmental health when the budget for the environmental health function transferred to the Department of Environment. This included a budget transfer of 680,000, sir, 11 full-time staff who are now integrated into the line management structures of that department. This move, sir, has taken advantage of a number of natural synergies at both strategic and operational level. The work between the work of the receiving department and the environmental health teams, by bringing the work together of the two bodies, there is an opportunity to realise operational efficiencies, benefit from shared knowledge and experience, but also to make clearer the work being done to protect the natural and built environment from wider influences, as well as in public environmental factors. So in practical terms, the team can now work with the State Spec, for example, to make food safety better. Food safety from the farm to the fork, to work with environmental protection and planning and building control to ensure better, consistent standards. I'd like to end, sir, by thanking the environmental health team for all their efforts so far. Their work has been much appreciated in my time as Minister. I particularly like to mention the success of the Eat Safe initiative, which members may recall gave a star rating to Ireland's restaurants, cafes, takeaways, based on the premise of food safety and food hygiene standards. Sir, a great success. I'm pleased to say that 99.6 of our 1,000+ food businesses reached the largely compliant standard used in England and Wales, where their figures are 93 and 94 respectively. The team's success in this and other areas have been heavily influenced by the approach that they take with a stress on partnership working and referral mechanisms. The service now works with over 20 different agencies across all sectors, ranging from charities to consultants to customs and excise, citizens advice and other professionals. So the team's general approach is one of persuasive compliance. I think they call it nudging these days, but it has paid dividends, and its success means that they seldom need to wield the big stick. Long may this continue, sir, and I look forward to seeing their work continuing in with the Environmental Department.
Are the other principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Deputy Smart.
Thank you, sir, and the Minister's left me absolutely nothing more to add other than to say to members that this move is aiding with efficiencies, and we will continue to have further cross-warranting, prevent the duplication of visits and ensure continued efficiency and improvements. Can I just add that my own thanks to the Minister for transferring environmental health over to my own portfolio. In the short time that I've had responsibility, I've immensely enjoyed working with the team. They are a group of devoted, hard-working, proactive officers who are doing a really good job of making Jersey a safer and better place for all our people, and I urge members to support this proposition.
Any other member wish to speak on the principles? I call on the Minister to respond.
Thanks, sir. I thank the Environment Minister for his words and ask members to accept this.
All those in favour of adopting the principles?
Secretary of the Appel, please.
The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. I'll ask the greffier to open the voting. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The principles have been adopted. 35 votes pour, 1 vote contre, no abstentions. Does the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel wish to scrutinise this? The Chairman's not here.
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you very much. How do you wish to deal with the matter in second reading then?
En bloc, please, sir.
The regulations seconded en bloc?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the regulations themselves? All members in favour of adopting the regulations kindly show. Those against? The regulations are adopted. Do you move the matter in third reading?
Yes, please, sir.
Is the matter seconded in third reading?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading? All those in favour of adopting the regulations in third reading, kindly show. Those against? Very well, the regulations are adopted in third reading. The next matter of public business is the Draft Sea Fisheries Inshore Trawling, Netting and Dredging Amendment Number 4 Jersey Regulations lodged by the Minister for the Environment, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Sea Fisheries Inshore Trawling, Netting and Dredging Amendment Number 4 Jersey Regulations 2000, the states in pursuance of Articles 2, 5 and 29 of the Sea Fisheries Jersey Law 1994 have made the following regulations.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Members will remember that last June I brought to this Assembly a package of measures to protect one of our most iconic fish, the bass. As part of that package, this Assembly approved an amendment to the Sea Fisheries Inshore Trawling, Netting and Dredging Jersey Regulations 2001 in order to limit the length of net that could be set on the beach to 100 metres. A further amendment to those regulations was approved in November 2016 to allow the Minister to set the length of net by order. This was done to provide the best mechanism to ensure timely and efficient management to fish stocks. And I indicated at that time, I hope members will remember, I indicated my intention to set the length of nets at 0. Subsequent to this amendment, upon receipt of further advice, another amendment is required to allow for the length of net to be set at 0. In other words, to prevent or prohibit the setting of nets on the beach. And it is this amendment that I am proposing today. It simply provides the correct legal mechanism to allow for the closure and opening of the beach net fishery when the stock assessment indicates that it is an appropriate management measure. The closure is provided by this amendment and the opening provided for by the ability for the Minister to do so by order. This gives the correct structure in the law. I've already been clear that I am convinced that the current bass stocks require prudent management, and I was quite explicit about that in my speech in November. And it was my intention, as I've already said, to set the length at 0. It is my intention to not table an order at this time, and therefore the season will not open later this year or this month. Some members may feel that the House has already debated these matters and agreed almost unanimously, and I would have to agree with that. However, I gave the commitment to members that I would return to this Assembly if regulations concerning our fisheries management could be improved, and I'm delivering on that commitment. This amendment provides a better legal framework, but nevertheless it provides a simple and structured process to allow for timely management of inshore stocks. It's a simple amendment. In principle, it has already been approved by this Assembly, and I urge members to support this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Are the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the principles?
Second.
Yes, David, did you wish to
Thank you,
speak?
sir. Yeah, I did. Just to make it clear that I know this is a matter which I've spoken on before and that many people are interested in. Could the Minister just clarify, but is this an enabling amendment today that he's bringing, or does it mean that actually after this that no nets will be able to be put on the beach, or does it simply give the Minister to make the ability to say that if he wants to, there will be no nets on the beach?
Does any other member wish to yes. Any other member wish to speak on the principles? All of the ministers to respond.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity to explain this, and also P37, which is the identical amendment which comes after this one. I think what I'm doing here is quite simple, and I need to probably explain it a bit better to members. When I first came forward with an amendment, I said that I had powers by order to set the length of nets that could be set on the beach to any length, and I indicated that I wanted to set that length at 0. Officially, the fishery was open, but I was setting the length of net at 0. What I'm doing here is, and after advice from law officers, it has been recommended that it's much simpler and simpler to close the fishery and then by order open it in the future. So what we're doing here today is getting to 0 by another mechanism. few months ago, the fishery was open, but I set it at 0, so nobody could fish. What we're doing now, and after advice, we're closing the fishery, and when in the future the stocks recover, I will reopen it at that time. So that's all I'm doing.
Very well. All those in favour of adopting the principles kindly show.
Can we have the appel, please?
The appel is called for. Invite members to return to their seats. I ask the greffier to open the voting. Well, there's no votes that are being registered on the machine at the moment. We'll try that again. Right. I'll ask the greffier to open the voting. No, I'm afraid no votes are registering on the electronic voting system. If the appel is called for, we'll go by the appel nominee. Yes, those members in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Those against? The principles are adopted. Does the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel wish to scrutinise the matter?
No.
How do you wish to deal with the matter in second reading?
I'll deal with them all block, please, sir.
Are they seconded en bloc? Does any member wish to speak on any of the regulations? All those in favour of adopting the regulations kindly show. Those against? The regulations are adopted. Deputy Talia, if you could switch off your microphone, because it isn't showing on here, and I'd like to know where the problem lies. If you feel not suggesting it's you. Do you wish to propose a matter in third reading?
Yes, please, sir.
Matter seconded in third reading? Does any member wish to speak in third reading? All those in favour of adopting the regulations in third reading, kindly show. Those against? The regulations are adopted in third reading. The next item is the Draft Sea Fisheries Inshore Waters Amendment Number 3 Jersey Regulations, lodged also by the Minister for the Environment. I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Sea Fisheries Inshore Waters Amendment Number 3 Jersey Regulations 2000. The states, in pursuance of Articles 2, 5 and 29 of the Sea Fisheries Jersey Law 1994, have made the following regulations.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And the principles of what I proposed in the last proposition are exactly the same here. Slightly different regulations. These are the Sea Fisheries Inshore Waters Regulations 1998. Previously, we debated this and agreed the way forward. I proposed a further regulation, and that was approved in November 2016 to allow, in this case, the setting of hooks and the number of hooks that could be set. Again, I indicated that I would like that limit to be 0, but on further advice, I'm now closing the fishery, and in the future, if we decide to reopen it, I will make that decision by order. So it's exactly the same principles, except this time we're dealing with hooks and not length of net. Yes. So I propose those regulations, sir.
Well, are the regulations, the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the principles? All those in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Those against? It may be the electronic system is now back operational, in case so that members are aware of that. How do you wish to deal with? And does the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel wish to deal with that matter?
So again, not.
Thank you very much. How do you wish to deal with the regulations in second reading?
Can I do it en bloc, please, sir?
Are the regulations en bloc seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on any of the regulations? All those in favour of adopting the regulations in second reading, kindly show. Those against? The regulations are adopted in second reading. You propose the matter in third reading?
Yes, please, sir.
Seconded in third reading?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading? All those in favour of
So I will ask for the appel, just to test the mood of the electronic devices.
The appellate is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. I ask the greffier to open the voting. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The regulations have been adopted in third reading. 38 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions. The next item of public business is the draft air navigation rules of Air Jersey regulations lodged by the Minister for External Relations, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Air Navigation Rules of the Air Jersey Regulations 2000. The states, in pursuance of Article 46 of the Air Navigation Jersey Law 2014, have made the following regulations.
Yes.
So, as part of the Single European Sky initiative, a common set of rules for airspace management has been introduced across Europe, known as the Standardized European Rules of the Air, or SIERA. SIERA was introduced in France in December 2014 and in the United Kingdom in April 2015, where they replaced the rules of the air upon which our current Jersey rules are based. SIERA brings the Europe fully into line with the international rules of the air laid down under the Chicago Convention. Throughout the implementation period in Europe, the Director of Civil Aviation of the Channel Islands has been monitoring the reaction of the aviation industry, and with the assistance of Ports of Jersey, it was decided to hold a stakeholder workshop in 2016. It was decided after that although some changes to procedures would be required, the effect on airspace users would be small, but in some cases would allow air traffic controllers to take a more permissive approach. The Director of Civil Aviation approached me to recommend that Jersey should make regulations to give effect to the new rules of the air in order to maintain common rules with neighbouring jurisdictions and to facilitate air navigation. And it is planned, sir, if the Assembly adopts these regulations, to bring them into force contemporaneously with Guernsey. The Air Navigation Jersey Law of 2014 makes provision under Article 46 for the states to make regulations regarding rules of the air which are compatible with the standard European rules of the air. So I move the principles of the regulations.
Are the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the principles? All those in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Those against? The principles are adopted. Deputy Breed, does the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel wish to scrutinise this matter?
No, sir, we do not.
How do you wish to propose the regulations?
Sir, if I may, I will propose the regulations en bloc together with the rules which are attached as a schedule to them. I don't think I need say any more on the rules than that they have a few significant differences to the existing rules. They changed the weather limits for visual flight rules to bring them into line with the internationally agreed standards. There are associated changes to some air traffic control clearances to facilitate access to airspace in deteriorating weather, and they introduce a requirement to fly at a minimum height of 500 feet if in general. At present, as I understand it, if you are flying over water with no watercraft in the vicinity, you can fly pretty much as low as you like. and there are also changes to terminology in the rules, again with a view to falling into line with ICAO standards. So I move the regulations and the schedule with the rules.
Are the regulations and schedule seconded? Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on the regulations? Deputy Gruville.
I'd just like to ask if any of this covers drones and the dangers of drones. I couldn't see anything in here, so, and if not, is anything going to be brought forward to alleviate the situation that we saw in Gatwick over the weekend? Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the regulations? I call on the Minister to respond.
So there are, in answer to the Deputy of Greville, existing provisions in the rules regarding drones, which prevent drones from being flown in the immediate vicinity of the airport, and I have been assured that they are satisfactory.
Very well. Those members in favour of adopting the regulations in second reading, including the schedule, kindly show. Those against? Well, the regulations and schedule are adopted in second reading. Close the matter in
I
third
move
reading.
the regulations in third reading.
Are the regulations in third reading seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading? Those members in favour of adopting the regulations in third reading, kindly show. Those against? The regulations are adopted in third reading. The next item is the medium-term financial plan, 2017 to 2090, amendment to funding for fee-paying schools lodged by the Minister for Education. I ask the referee to read the proposition.
The States are asked to decide whether their opinion to refer to their Act dated 30th of September 2016, in which they approved, in principle, minor adjustments to subsidies for states and private fee-paying schools, as set out in Appendix 1 of the draft medium-term financial plan edition for 2017 to 19, P68 2016 as adopted as amended, and their Act dated 14th of June 2011, in which they agreed that changes to the financial arrangements for such schools should be the subject of a separate proposition to the states before implementation, and to approve the implementation of the adjustments to subsidies for those schools agreed, in principle, on 30th of September 2016, by reducing the percentage of age-weighted pupil unit, AWPU, states funding payable to private fee-paying schools, Bollier Convent, Dullasall College and FCJ Primary, and states fee-paying schools, Victoria College Prep, Jersey College for Girls and Jersey College Prep, by 1.5% in 2018 and by a further 1.5% in 2019.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Most members will be aware that the Assembly has already approved this during the medium-term financial plan debate back in 2016. Members will also be aware that usually the Assembly would not be required to consider this again. However, Proposition P72 of 2011, brought by the previous Senator Shenton, asked that matters relating to school funding are brought to the Assembly separately so that the rationale for any changes can be explained. I think the proposition explains in great detail the rationale behind the saving, but it is worth taking a little time to put some flesh on the bones and address some of the concerns you may have. There are 3 points to consider: vision, impact and fairness. Firstly, the vision. I want to stress, strongly as I possibly can, that this is not the same proposal that Deputy Reid brought in 2011. This is not the same battle. In fact, I would say there isn't even a battlefield. Quite the opposite. We have moved on. From where I'm standing, there is no them and us in Jersey education anymore. I expect there's no one here who wants to go back to those days. I'm not sure if there was a clear vision for education back in 2011, but there certainly is now. I see it as one system made up of different kinds of school, but all united under one business plan and one set of priorities, which you've heard me talk about many times. We're all standing on the same side now and moving in the same direction towards the same aim. That is, for every student to have the best opportunities, for them to do their best, no matter wherever they are educated, and irrespective of whether their parents pay fees for their schooling or not. We all benefit when the people in our society have a good, solid education. As Education Minister, I also want to stress that the department and I hold our fee-paying schools in high regard. We truly value the high standard of education they provide, and we recognise the contribution these schools make to the island. Not only do they provide excellent opportunities for their students, but their partnership with the government helps to finance education in Jersey and means the cost of schooling overall is reduced for our taxpayers. This is unique to Jersey. It gives more families more choice, and it's something we should be proud of. Over the past few years, all our schools have had to deal with huge changes imposed from the outside. A new curriculum, new assessment systems, and new exams. We worked through this period together with teachers and with unions to make this happen. Results are improving, and we have new initiatives like the Jersey Premium to help our students, and there's a real positive feeling we're moving in the right direction. With all that as the backdrop, I have absolutely no desire to unsettle the current offerings or structure. Senator Shenton's proposition was designed, I believe, to prevent change by the back door, but it is no longer needed. Education is in a completely different place. This savings proposal is simply about balancing the books financially in the short term. There is no intention, none whatsoever, in this proposition attempting to change Jersey's education system in any fundamental way. That brings me to the second point, impact. You all know that education was tasked in the MTFP to make savings. With the financial position as it was, and education holding the third biggest budget, we had no choice but to play our part. When we discuss spreading the savings across education, we were careful to ensure that the effect on frontline services will be minimal. This is an important point. Of course, we looked at the context and what was happening in terms of fees. We found that between 2013 and 2016, school fees went up every year, sometimes by more than 5%. However, despite these annual increases, parents didn't move their children into free education in large numbers. On average, just 16 pupils a year left fee-paying schools. Many of these were for recognised educational reasons. Some students need the special educational needs support that can only be found in state schools. Finance was not usually a documented factor. This tells us that parents using fee-paying schools really value the continuity of their children's education. They've made a conscious choice to commit to paying fees and prioritise this for their children. It is the reason why we don't expect to see a mass exodus of children into the state schools. I am conscious, of course, some parents will be worried. And at the time I wrote this, last Friday, a total of 10 parents have contacted the ministerial team directly, and a further 10 have contacted the Education Department to outline their concerns. I want to reassure them and this Assembly that there are no plans for any further savings in this area. No plans whatsoever. As I said before, I do not want to unbalance the system. We've attempted to minimise as far as possible the financial discomfort some parents may be feeling. Our proposal, if schools decide to pass it on to parents, will result in far smaller increases than parents have accepted over the past few years. Just 1.5% in the first year, and a further 1.5% in the second year. As the Connor tablet of St. John illustrated to me earlier, this represents 6% in the secondary and 12% in the primary. This works out at £3.20 a week per child over the course of a calendar year. £3.20 a week. That is what we are really talking about. The real figures you will find articulated on page 13 of the proposition. We also made sure that the introduction was staggered over 2 years and made sure we could tell parents well ahead of time. Remember, this will not come fully into effect until 2019. We continually work closely with the schools and we informed every head as soon as we could that this was likely to happen, so that they could take this into consideration when making their decisions about their fee increases to parents. It must be noted and understood that schools are not obliged to pass their cost on. It could be that they soak it up completely, or they attempt to further stagger the effect. They could increase a small portion of this, or not at all. It is entirely up to them. We have to acknowledge that every family has a differential financial tipping point. And that's why we've tried to keep this change as small as possible. If some parents consider moving their child, they can contact the education department and we will help them. We do have capacity and places available across our state schools. Thirdly, this is about fairness, a really crucial point. It is only right that we share the savings right across the educational landscape. There's already an imbalance, and we do not want to widen the gap further by protecting one kind of school and not another. With great care, we look first at the department and non-essential services to make savings, which we did. Only then did we look at school budgets. Always we were looking at limiting the impact and spreading the burden evenly. The other education savings we submitted were not protected by a second chance proposition like this and are going ahead. If this does not proceed, other schools or education services will have to shoulder this saving of $600,000. It is worth reminding members that this Assembly has already approved the cash limits. They are set in law. So we would have to look at cuts in other parts of education if this one is overturned. If you believe this is wrong and decide to vote against it, you will be simply moving the saving to other children in different schools. I understand that those who say that we shouldn't be cutting education at all. In an ideal world, I would agree. I fought for education to be a state's priority. I worked to ensure we created a carefully balanced package of savings, and the adjustment to funding for fee-paying schools is an essential part of that. Education is moving forward. Now is not the time for us to find $600,000 elsewhere in the education system. If you do not support this saving, then you can change it, but at the next MTFP. We have planned in detail until 2020 and shared out the budget carefully. We need less turmoil, not more. So please let us proceed today as planned and endorse this proposition as you did last October. Thank you, sir.
Sir, can I take a point of clarification from the Minister? Yes. Right. Could the Minister clarify, on the words of the proposition, what percentage we are reducing the grants by? And if I need to clarify on that, if whilst I'm standing, sir, could I, A, reserve my right to speak later, as a point of clarification, and B, and could I also just declare an interest in that I have two children at fee-paying schools, but I understand that's a wider shared interest.
But that is a wider shared interest. It doesn't disqualify you from participating, yes. Yes, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, sir. Yes, it is outlined in the proposition. So we are the AWPU, the AWPU, which is the age-weighted pupil unit percentage, is being reduced from 50% to 47% in the secondary schools and from 25% to 22% in the primary schools.
So the reason for asking that question, the proposition says 1.5% in 2018 and a further 1.5% in 2019, which brings it to a total of 3%. Across for primary schools, then that's actually a 12% reduction, and for secondary school, that's a 6% reduction. That is not 1.5% in year 1 and 3% in year 2. And so that's why I'm seeking a clarification, because I think the proposition, as people would ordinarily read it, people may have misunderstood the impact of this proposition.
You've asked for a point of clarification from the Minister. Do you wish to further clarify, Mr. Lee?
I can give further clarification. I mean, the Deputy is quite right in his assumption it's a matter of percentages, and the problem you get when you start talking about percentages, it becomes quite embedded in numbers. The actual real savings, the figure that I mentioned before, and I have given an illustration I've sent round to States members to sort of explain this by email. If you look at page 13, that gives you the actual effect of the saving on the reduction to the schools.
The point is, so what is the percentage reduction that the Minister is proposing to this Assembly?
I think This can't turn into a to-ing firm.
So may I raise a point of order?
Yes.
So perhaps it would be, I understand what the to and fro is that perhaps you could rule, sir, as to actually what the proposition actually means, because I'm reading it, and perhaps you're the presiding officer, I'm reading it in the plain English way in which the Minister explained. I know there's other people are trying to interpret in different ways, sir, so perhaps I could invite you to make on a point of order of exactly to explain to the Assembly or to confirm that my understanding is that this is a reduction in the ORPU for 1% from 50 to 1.5% reductions, 1 in 18 to 48.5 and then to 47%. That seems to me the plain English explanation of it, and I just invite you to make a ruling as to, so we can't have this argy-bargy.
Well, I'm not so sure I'm in a position to make a ruling on the meaning of it. I can rule on what it says, but I don't think I can necessarily rule on what the consequences are and what it means without a great deal more information. I think what we must do is proceed with the debate, and then I would expect that matters will be clarified as we go along. Is the proposition seconded? Right. Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Bryans. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Sir, I wonder if I might just ask for some guidance on this. The youngest of my many children are moving up to Bollier in September, and therefore I'm directly interested in the outcome of this debate. Would there be a requirement for me to remove myself from the Assembly?
No, this is a matter that you share in common with a significant number of other people, Deputy, and it's a matter of general application, and you're right to have declared it, but you certainly don't need to disqualify yourself from the debate. Conrad Harbison John.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask respectfully that the Minister withdraw this because it is mathematically incorrect. And if he will not do so, then I would hate to continue and embarrass him by producing the correct mathematics for this proposition.
No, sir, it won't be.
Well, I think you may have to go ahead and produce the correct mathematics then.
Fine, thank you, sir. The current level of support to the private schools is £9,375,000. If you were to reduce that, as the proposition proposes, by 1.5%, that is approximately £140,000. And that's in 2018. If you further reduce it by another 1.5% in 2019, as the proposition very clearly states, you will be reducing it by another £140,000 in 2019. That is what the proposition says, and it is quite clear. That gives a total reduction of £281,000 over the 2 years from the 9.375 million that's currently given. However, your maths at the rear of your proposition on page 13 firstly doesn't add up because you claim that the reduction...
The Minister claims. Through the Chair, please.
Through the Chair, sir, yes.
The Minister claims.
The Minister claims that this will result in a saving of £608,000, when on the table the reductions show £647,000. It's very simple. It's a straightforward 9-figure addition, which I'm sure anybody in this Assembly can do. And when you add those 9 figures together, you end up with 647,000 as opposed to 608,000. However, the importance is that when you take 1.5% reduction and a further 1.5% reduction, that comes to £281,000. So the report that supports the proposition is inaccurate mathematically. And I find it an insult, sir, to this Assembly that a proposition should come forward that is mathematically incorrect. Simple things like percentages and additions should not be wrong when a proposition is brought to this Assembly. I asked the Minister to withdraw it, and he refused. And I find it, sir, unacceptable that we should continue a debate with information in front of us that is mathematically incorrect. As for the actual proposition, we as an Assembly have already agreed a contradictory MTFP, because one of the strategic aims laid out by the Council of Ministers and the Chief Minister, sir, at the beginning of our term of government was to invest in education. We have seen the total sum of money per pupil in both the private sector and the public sector now being reduced. I don't call that investing in education. I dare say that the ministers will reply by, we're investing £40 million in a new school, we've just invested X millions of pounds in a new school in St Martin's. But this is money for teachers. The important thing, sir, in a school is the teacher, not just the bricks and mortar. And it's property holdings that have failed to maintain the schools over the years that has resulted in these big investments. But we're talking here about education, and we're talking here about pupils and the amount of money available for individual pupils to get them educated, hopefully to a significantly better standard than myself, so that when they look at a proposition like this, they'll go, phew, who on earth ever agreed with that? So I would urge members of this Assembly to simply pick up your iPads, pick up your smartphones, and do the arithmetic. Add up the figures at the back page, and it comes to 647,000, not 608. Do a simple mathematical sum. Take the 9.375 million minus 1.5%, then take that answer and minus another 1.5%, and what do you end up with? You end up with 9.075 billion, I think, off the top of my head, yes. And you will not make the savings that the Minister is looking to do. This is an insult, sir, to this Assembly to bring a proposition with such basic mathematical errors. I urge members to reject it. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if the Minister wants to further clarify. Am I able to give way to the Minister if he wants to clarify those? No, he's done it. Okay, I wasn't going to spend a long time on the figures because my assumption was that the Minister would have covered that off. I think the Constable of St John's, he has found possibly a mistake in their adding up of the figures on the table. But the basic premise still remains that it's a small cut being made to the private schools. I don't think it's worth us getting too deep into the details today. And actually the Minister has acknowledged the alternative, the other way of looking at the percentages. The way I see it, in one way of looking at it, you're looking at the percentage of the whole amount of funding, and the other percentage is the proportion that is provided to the schools by the states, not from the parents. So there are two different percentages there, that's why. My panel did scrutinise these proposals during the MTFP already, and we commented within our comments paper for that as part of that review, and we opposed them at that time, as we opposed any cuts to education, and there was no challenge to these cuts at the time of the MTFP. It was approved by this Assembly. The Minister has mentioned that it's already been approved. But we did look again at this. We've done some subsequent work on this. The original submissions that we received were from two two of the fee-paying schools that raise concerns that the additional costs may have to be passed on to the parents, and this might negate any of the savings made. It's the argument that we have perhaps heard time and time again, and it does become a circular argument. The panel, in fact, can see both sides of the argument here. I'll come back to that. Our subsequent work, I want to first of all thank the Bowlia Parents Consultative Committee, who have engaged with the panel very constructively in informing us of the potential impacts there might be on families where there's girls at Bowlia School. So the consultative committee estimated to the panel that 5%, if 5% of the children attending Bowlia left to attend state schools, then any savings made by this proposition would be eliminated. That's something for members to possibly consider. That's not something that the panel can either verify or not. This is a much larger piece of work. I'll come back to that again. We did ask for figures on the number of children who had left the school as a result of any fee increases, which have happened every year since 2013, at around about 3.5%. And the answer we were given was typically only a handful of students has left each year. So that does give some indication, actually, of the numbers of students that may leave if the fees go up by certain percentages. So there's arguments on both sides here, but it was clear to us, actually, that some families, particularly families whose daughters are at Bowlia, may face some difficulties if we approve this today. So that is something for members to consider. Also worth noting is that it was only parents with children at Bowlia who contacted us. We didn't have any parents with children at other schools contacting us at all. So with that particular case, sir, I do wonder, sir, whether the Minister might agree to look more closely at the support he could give to Bowlia, and to update the panel on this, on anything he can do in that area. So when doing work in this area, the panel looked at P72 2011, which was titled Grant Aided Schools, and this was a proposition firstly to produce a green and white paper to bring any changes to the states prior to making any changes to funding for fee-paying schools, and also, and the Minister, I think we should acknowledge that the Minister is actually duly complying with this previous state's decision in bringing it back to us today. It's quite an unusual thing that a Minister has to do to come back a second time. So we acknowledge that the Minister is following the procedure there. However, the other part of P72 that required a green and white paper process be carried out. Now, the process behind green and white papers is not it's not set in stone in Jersey, as it's not as set as it is in the UK. And there was some consultation. I think back in 2013 there was Learning for Tomorrow's World, the future of education in Jersey. I remember that consultation myself, which apparently nothing came of that, sir, which the panel regrets. And in any case, the gap between, well, that's 4 years, the gap between then and now is so large that it couldn't really be seen to be linked in any way. So we do regret that the required consultation required by P72, the second part of that, has not actually taken place, even more so because it has become clear to the panel that there may be some difficulties for some families. So one way of looking at this proposition is that it's possible that the Minister should be maintaining the grants at the current levels because he has not followed both parts, he's not adhered to both parts of P72. However, the panel is very concerned, as the Minister has said, if the savings proposed here are not accepted, they will have to be made from somewhere because as an Assembly we have already approved this, and if no alternative savings have been identified by the Minister or by any other member, and the panel would question where this money would have to come from. And in the event that savings would have to come from the non-fee paying state schools, this is not an acceptable situation to the panel. So I urge members not to get into a long debate about this today because we're not going to change the nature of our education system today. this is a proposition or something we've already approved. I think the Minister should note the concerns raised by the Bowlia Parents Consultative Committee, and I'd like to know how he's going to address those concerns. And we've talked about consultation. The panel is very strongly of the opinion, sir, that further work needs to be done looking at the structure of our education system as a whole, because these issues keep coming up and we're tinkering around the edges with them, and we actually need to tackle these issues as an Assembly and as an island and decide what type of education system we think is fair and appropriate for our island and for the children of our island. So I would urge the Education Minister, I'm not sure what form this might take, but the panel believes an independent review should be carried out. And it should be independent because it's impossible to not have a view in this area. Because if you've been brought up in Jersey, you've either gone to one of these private schools or you've gone to a state school. I myself, sir, I've attended both. I've attended private schools and state schools. I try to have a balanced view, but I think we all have a view on this. And I think what I would like to be taken away from this debate today, whether it's approved or not, I would like to see an independent review into our education system, so that not taking members' views on, so that entrenched views are put aside and we can take a balanced and fair look at our education system. So just to sum up, sir, the panel has reluctantly agreed that this proposition is in order. And we do recommend that members support it, given the reasons that I've covered today.
Deputy Mesny.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to follow the scrutiny chairman, whose words I completely agree with. I've sort of been provoked to stand up and speak this early on in the debate because of the speech from the Constable of St John, which I think has the capacity to confuse people, and he's made a very clear assertion that the numbers in this proposition are wrong, when from my reading of it, I don't think the numbers are wrong. In the Constable's explanation, he tried to say that this 1.5% in 2018 and 1.5% in 2019 would amount to the figures he gave. But if you read the proposition, it does not say that it's reducing the subsidy by 1.5% next year and then 1.5% the year after. What it says is that it's reducing the percentage of the age-weighted pupil unit. Now, that is an equation. That is not a blanket amount of money. That's an equation, and it's worked out in itself by percentages of being 50% for students in secondary education and 25% for students in primary education, which means over those 2 years, it's going to go from 50% to 47% for those children in secondary education. So if you're looking at it from the formula, the numbers do add up. And I appreciate that that is not necessarily obvious at first glance, but I do think it's important to say in a debate, when we're talking about numbers and talking about this policy, that we should be clear on what it is, even if sometimes things can be a little bit difficult to analyse from that point. And I'm speaking from the position of being able to say that I voted against this last time round, because I voted against the entire MTFP. I voted against every single clause in it because I didn't like what it was setting the island out for. I still don't like what it's setting the island out for. But now when we come to this proposition, I will support it because, and I think the Education Minister rightly said in his speech, that we have an MTFP which has been agreed and spending parameters set, and to not adopt this particular proposition as part of the broader picture of the MTFP means we have to find savings somewhere else. Where does that come from? I will not be responsible in my vote for seeing potential extra funding cuts to nursery education, to higher education grants, to teachers' salaries, to anything else, because I've opposed all of those from the start, and to vote against this potentially opens the door for unpalatable cuts somewhere else that we don't know where they are. So that, I think, is a strong basis on its own for supporting this. And to, I don't think this is getting too ideological here to say this, but I think there are a reasonable number of of people who look at the current funding structure for the fee-paying schools and look at it and see, right, we currently give £9.3 million, and that is argued that it's the right thing to do because it enables those schools to keep their fees down, which means people can go to those schools rather than be educated fully in the state sector where it costs the states more to do so in the long run. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at that £9.3 million and saying, is that the optimum amount? Is that the perfect balance to get the right number of families able to send their kids to fee-paying schools versus state schools? And the answer to that question is, well, no, we have no evidence that £9.3 million is the optimum amount. If we reduce it, and the schools therefore have to raise their fees, or possibly have to raise their fees, that will inevitably, well, I say inevitably, it could potentially lead to some children leaving those fee-paying schools into the state schools where it will cost us more to educate them. But if none do, or a very small amount do, you have still made a saving overall. So to work out what is the optimum level of subsidy, it is wrong to say it's 9.3 million and we can never debate that, it must be that. Maybe it's not 9.3 million. Maybe it is 8.7 million. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's more than that. So what I think it's sensible to listen to what the Education Minister is proposing on this occasion and say, right, let's do this. This is very modest, especially when you compare it to the proposals that were made several years ago where they were suggesting cutting the subsidy by half, something that was much more drastic than what's being proposed now and which, of course, was voted against last time round. Let's look at what this modest saving does, see the effect, and if it has the effect of causing mass disruption, then that can be addressed, hopefully, relatively quickly. But I suspect what it's likely to do is not cause that mass disruption at all. In fact, what it does is it enables the Education Minister to spend the money that he does have allocated on those excellent schemes that we want to support, like pupil premium that he's spoken about. And I will say I'm being cautiously complimentary of him on this policy, which is not my style, as we well know. I'm still, from these benches, going to pressure him to do more. I'm still going to pressure the Council of Ministers to allocate more funding for education. I think we spend, as a proportion of our GDP, we spend nowhere near enough on education as we should do. It needs drastic increases in funding. And I would have said that before yesterday, before the report from the Care Inquiry, which spoke about the impact of social deprivation can have on the care system. I'd have said that before that. I think it's right to spend more on education. But I also like the idea that has been expressed by Deputy Doublé about looking at our entire education system and working out what is the best model for delivering education to everybody in the island, what educational choice we provide families, what level of support we provide, at what point in the education process that support should go up to. I think that's a discussion well having, and I think to support this proposition right now provides the Education Minister with what he needs to be able to get on with his job. Though it doesn't go as far as I would like him to be going, to not support this would mean he'd have to cut back on other areas, and I couldn't possibly support that. I think this proposal is very moderate. It will save an amount of money, and I think that the Constable of St John's explanation for not voting to support this was deeply, deeply flawed, and if we are going to cast our votes on this proposition, it should be on the basis of facts and accurate numbers, and I'll be supporting the proposition.
Deputy Kevin Lewis.
Thank you, sir. I will not be supporting the proposition, sir. I've had quite a few people contact me. The average annual fee at the moment for the private and faith schools, primary $5,085, and an average fee for secondary $5,373, which is an awful lot of money. And I believe between, 2018, 2019, it'd be going up by approximately between 120 and 190 pounds. It's if everybody pays for education in their taxes, if you wish to send your child to a faith school or a private school, that is your choice. But if you have more than one child, this can be a really, really onerous fee coming your way. If you have 3 children, I'd say it must be getting near out of the question. Not everybody is rich who wishes to send their child to a faith school. A lot of people go without holidays, they go without the nice things that we all enjoy. So I think we need to draw a line here, sir, and I will not be supporting the proposition. Thank you.
Deputy Lafondre?
Yes, sir. Whilst reserving my ability to speak later, sir, under Standing Order, I think it's 83(1)B, I'd like to propose a reference back, assuming I'm using the right number, sir, because that is I'm using an older copy of Standing Orders. And the basis for that, sir, is any ambiguity or inconsistency in information relating to the proposition which has already been provided to the states be clarified. Shall I let you just judge that, sir, and then I'd like to speak on that, sir.
Well, 83(1) provides that a member of the States may propose without notice during the debate that the proposition be referred back in order that further information relating to the proposition can be provided to the States, or any ambiguity or inconsistency in information relating to the proposition which has already been provided to the States be clarified. So you're doing it on the basis of 1B?
Yes, sir.
Well, so precisely then, what is the ambiguity or inconsistency that you're seeking?
I was going to cover that in my speech, sir. But,
yes, very well. You can make your
Thank you, sir. I think it falls into 3 categories, sir, and working backwards. Number 1, sir, the financial implications of this, as the Conotaba St John's has already correctly pointed out, are incorrectly calculated. So, for example, is it 608,000 or is it 647,000? They might say, well, that's actually irrelevant, but on the basis that we should actually be debating these type of things on the basis of sound information, and to quote Deputy Mezek, facts and accurate numbers, we are not doing so, sir. Point 2, to pick up actually on something that Deputy Mezek talked about, which was confusion. A 1.5% reduction in 50% would take the rate down to 49.25. That's not where we are. So there is a confusion, sir, between what is in the proposition and what is in the report. The proposition clearly states a reduction in the percentage of 1.5% in 2018 and a further 1.5%, bring it total to 3% in 2019. It is very clear, sir, in the back of the report in terms of how these things are being calculated, that actually does equate to a 6% reduction in the grant to secondary schools and a 12% reduction to the grant in primary schools. And obviously the Minister is nodding to that, sir. Now, the point I would suggest, sir, is that from a straightforward reading of the proposition, which is what we vote on, it is not clear that we are actually achieving 1.5% reductions. I would submit, sir, we are achieving much bigger reductions if we vote on that, sir. I think I'll keep it there. But there is an inconsistency, sir, between the wording of 1.5% in 2018 and a further 1.5% in 2019 and the actual impact. In fact, sir, sorry, I said I'd keep it there. What I will do, sir, yes, temptation, I meant to find a particular page. If people look on if members look on the actual proposition, sir, and look firstly on page 5, and then if I can find it, and it's disappeared, page 13. And I'll just pick solely on any secondary school, sir. So, actually, so just to keep it consistent, we'll go to page 4, sir. Page 4 has JCG secondary funding rate presently 50%. On page 13, at the very top in that box, it says JCG secondary new rate 47%. The difference is 3. That is a 6% reduction, because it's 3 on 50, therefore it's 6 on 100. Does that make sense? I'm hoping people understand that. On the and the Minister is nodding. On the primary school level, sir, at the bottom of the table on page 4, VCP Prep Primary, 25%. On page 13, they go to 22%. If members will accept my maths, that's actually a 12% reduction. And hopefully the Minister will nod on that and my maths as well. Therefore, there is an inconsistency, in my view, in the way the matters are being presented to the states, because it refers to a 1.5% reduction in the percentage. I think I'll stop there, sir. I will, if this reference back is rejected, I will speak later on in the debate, no doubt. But in my view, there's an inconsistency, and we need to be clear on what we're actually voting on, and therefore, because there are subsequent consequences. Because bluntly, sir, there is a major difference between a 1.5% reduction in a grant to a primary school and a ultimate 3% and a 12% reduction. Thank you, sir.
Is the proposal for reference back seconded? Does any member wish to speak on the proposition for a reference back?
So I think this is more of an interpretation of English as opposed to the numbers, sir, because it's a 1.5% reduction on the age-weighted pupil unit. It's apples and pears, sir. You can't transfer that across to the whole of the budget. And if you look across at page 13, where the council and indeed my fellow parish deputy implied that the figures have been added up wrong. You have a target figure of £608,000. That is correct, sir. It is a target figure, but the actual estimated figures that are going to be saved is the 647. So the numbers are not wrong. It's the, if I may say, the constable and the deputy's interpretation of the English that is different to my own, sir.
Senator Joseph.
Thank you, sir. So I was trying to look up on my iPad, as the Constable of St John has suggested, what the mathematical equivalent of a pedant was. Because clearly it is simply mathematical pedantry that I think that he is focusing on. So the plain English explanation of this, as is absolutely clear from the recital of the proposition and the Minister's report, is clear. It is 1.5% reduction in the ORPU from 50 to 47.5 to 48.5 to 47%. And maybe that I don't have a degree in mathematics. I got a degree in something, and I can't. I thought that I did actually look up the explanation of what a pedant was. It's a person obsessed with detail or process, often negatively perceived. And a pedant is a person who is excessively concerned with formalization and precision. Anyway, I'm not obsessed with anything else apart from the plain English explanation of what this is, which the Minister has explained, and it is also, if I may say, in exactly the same terms as previous propositions that have been submitted to this Assembly. And as the Minister also said, this is simply an extra step requirement as a result of the adoption of P71 of 2011, which was the MTFP that, in fact, I was somewhat to do with. And the only thing I would say is if the CONITAB and other members don't wish to vote in favour of this because they are against the philosophy of it in reducing the fees, the subsidy, then that's fine. But to try and hide behind the mathematics, I think, would be wrong. And the only other thing I would say is one member said that this was effectively a reduction in money for teachers. I don't think that's quite right, sir. I think what this is a genuine...
So, Senator, the debate on this has to be restricted to the reference back, not on...
Oh, right, sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I didn't even realise we were having a reference back. I'm so sorry. I went outside to try and understand it. Oh, sorry.
This is a debate on the depth of...
Oh, right, no, so I'll continue because it's all relevant then. Well, it's absolutely not a reference back. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't have a reference back. There's nothing wrong with the plain English. It's absolutely clear. The report is clear. The recital is clear. And absolutely, there's no case whatsoever to be heard. I've never heard any such mathematical pedantry in my life.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition for a reference back? Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I'm not actually sure that the Deputy is as confused as he's trying to indicate. He is actually saying exactly the same thing as the Minister. They are just describing it differently. For my part, sir, I would have a lot of sympathy with the Deputy, referring to a change from 50 to 47 being a 6% change, rather than the 1.5 and 1.3, 1.5 being 3. But he and I both know that we could spend all day agreeing or disagreeing by doing various mathematical calculations, and it comes down to whether the department should have done a mathematical calculation and recorded in their proposition a 6 and 12% change, which the Deputy is referring to, which the Minister accepts, or whether they should have described it in the way that they have as a 1.5% and a 1.5% change. It's the plain English version, sir, as much as it pains me to acknowledge that. I think it is the plain English version that members would expect the Minister to have in his proposition, whilst acknowledging a change from 50 to 47 is, of course, a 6% change. When we changed GST from 3% to 5%, the plain English understanding of that was that that was a 2% change. Of course, it wasn't a 2% change, as you well know, and as the Deputy himself well knows. So I don't believe, sir, that for a minute that the Deputy is actually confused, nor requires further information from the Minister or the Department. The proposition is as it is. The report gives further clarity to that plain English interpretation of what the number actually is, sir. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition for a reference back? Deputy Sutherland.
Yes, sir. The Education Minister has come clean. We agree round here what the numbers actually mean. There is no further information that anybody in this room needs in order to make up their mind. It's that simple.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition for a reference back? Deputy Fondre.
Thank you, sir. It is unusual because how many times have members said, look at the wording of the proposition, not what is in the report? And I find it very disappointing that it's the Department of Education that have actually produced something that is this unclear. Bluntly, I would expect them to be setting the standards in clarity on what we're actually voting on. And it is all about presentation. Because it is very easy to sell to the public it's a 1.5% reduction in the grant, because that's nothing. It's a bit different to turn around to the primary schools and say it's actually a 6% grant in the first year and then a 12% reduction in the second year. That's, in magnitude, somewhat different. Now, if members are clear on that, fine. Then we'll go through, and no doubt people and members actually are just going for the fear factor, oh, well, what are the consequences? They are not turning around. They are saying they accept what I will call sloppy wording. And I'm disappointed, actually, in comments from ministers, and actually former ministers, because it could explain why ministers sometimes are mathematically confused. It could explain the issues around trying to get cost control done and clarity on numbers and all that type of stuff. So how many times have members been told to vote on the proposition? The proposition clearly states reducing the percentage of age-weighted pupil unit is the percentage by 1.5% in 2018 and a further 1.5% in 2019. In fact, the Constable John in the coffee room was saying, we'd be delighted to vote for that, because the financial impact of that is only £280,000. It's not whichever number you wish to pick of 600 or 650 odd thousand quid. That's okay. If members are happy with that, then obviously we'll vote against the reference back, but let's get some clarity. Haven't we been going on about clarity, transparency, holding ministers to account? This wording is appalling. I think I'll probably stop there, sir. And on that basis, I make the proposition and call for the appel, sir.
As called for, I invite members to return to their seats. The vote to be taken is the vote on whether or not there should be a reference back to bring clarification as to whether 608,000 and 647,000 are the correct figures to be operating from in the last part of the proposition, and the confusion, if it be confusion, to be clarified between the difference between two reductions of 1.5% or whether they are in fact 6 or 12% or whether further information is needed in those respects. I ask the referee to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of voting. I ask the referee to close the voting. The proposition for a reference back has been defeated. 6 votes for, 31 votes contra, no abstentions.
Those voting for, Senator Ferguson, the Conotop of St John, Deputies Martin, Lafondre, Kevin Lewis and Bree.
We continue now with the debate on the main proposition. Deputy Martin.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I did support the reference back. I didn't speak on it, but I was utterly confused because I've been told we should be listening to the plain English, and it's a mathematical equation that I'm now supposed to look at. But I am sort of concerned. I sat here, sir, and I read all through the excellent, I would say, excellent report from the scrutiny panel. And all the way through, I couldn't really see much support, except for the last paragraph. And it says, therefore, despite recognising reasons that this is not done, sorry, I need my glasses. Well, that's the panel reluctantly accepts that this proposition is in order. Well, if any time I've ever heard sort of a yes, well, this is possibly okay, and then the other, and then the chairman spoke, and I really respect Deputy Dubé, and I don't think she could even wholeheartedly say, you must support this. We then heard from, I think he's still a panel member, Deputy Mezek, and he said we must support this. And it's not just about his philosophy that maybe he's not sort of too supportive of private education. That may be his philosophy. He mentioned that if we don't support this, a saving of 600 and something thousand would be coming out of state schools. Well, I thought this was a saving in the MTFP that was going back in the nice little pot. Am I right? Yes, I am. So do not be misled by the deputy behind me. This is not going to be going anywhere except in the pot to be redistributed. Then I have to now talk plain figures, because what is it, sir? Is it $3.20 a week, £166 a year? Is it double that next year? Well, I think it is. What if you have 2 children? Nobody knows, because nobody did do the white paper or the green paper or the proper consultation. And what about these 16 children that are suddenly going to fall out of private education, that could be 32, and flood the already overstretched 4 states senior schools we have, and some very, very overcrowded classes in our primary schools? No work done on this. We've heard this morning, we heard this morning, and I really don't want to go back to the debate where we are making education and we are now making children our top priority, and we're arguing over pennies apparently here, because this was one. We have cut to give more money to education, health. There is a third, and I know the fourth St Helier, and we never got anything, but that's beside the point. We're talking about education today, sir. So I read this, and then I read, well, somebody's had a look in the UK and see how much their private schools pay. They are not comparing apples, even to oranges, sir. I think they're comparing it to some sort of luxurious pineapple, because this is what the schools in the private schools in the UK, they are multi-millionaires going there, their children going there, not the hard-working mums and dads, the majority who do send their children to, probably because they're faith schools, probably because they're maybe same-sex schools, but for whatever reason, they are struggling. And I do stand here worrying when we say, and we're being told again and again, well, we agreed this in the MTFP. Nobody objected to it. Did you read the 3,000 pages that was, and the annex, and the annex, and the annex, and which page was this on? But we agreed to it. Of course we did. There's a lot of other things we agreed to. And I think, like Deputy Mesic, I actually voted against the whole thing. So I didn't agree, sir. So I can stand here today and say, in plain mathematics, sir, I don't know. I don't care about the, does it add up to this? Is it 0.5%? Is it 6%? Nobody has done the research to tell me the knock-on effect on the hard-working parents, the knock-on effect if it is more than 16, if it doubles to 32, 50 children a year, to place the extra children in our already overcrowded classes that we used to keep at a certain amount, and now there are already two more, 3 more, 4 more pupils in that class every year. So it's plain mathematics to me, sir. The questions haven't been answered. So I'm very sorry, sir. I did support the reference back, but I can't support this because you can read this how you like to read it. It's going to affect somebody, and the money, please don't be fooled, is going to go and help somebody else. It's going back into the pot because it's the savings that education promised to make, and that's what they do when they do the salami slicing, cut, 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 and you've got to find something, and this is where we'll get it from. We don't know. I want a white paper, sir, I want a green paper, and I want some answers before I'd ever support anything like this. Thank you.
Deputy Taddy.
Thank you, sir. I've been prompted to speak. I thought about whether I should or shouldn't speak on this, given that it's an election year and we don't want to upset too many middle-class parents who tend to vote, which is fine, and I wish more people would vote. Well, I don't know why that got a groan. I mean, it's simply a statement of fact. Let's get on to that in a minute. But when I heard the words that this deputy was misled by someone behind her, referring to Deputy Mezek, well, we can't have it both ways. I think we are told that, and it's not something that we agree with as a party, we've resisted the cuts and we fought against the cuts because we see them for what they are. But if we want to actually invest more in education, and it is a very strange way that the Council of Ministers are doing it, because we know that the scrutiny report did tell us at one point that actually there's no real money, real increase going into education, but they've simply been spared from some of the ravages that other departments have had to put up with in terms of their fee reduction. So the savings are being redistributed. So the motivation for this is clearly so that there don't have to be even bigger cuts, Deputy Martin, in education. Because if we carried on funding the private schools and the grant-maintained schools at the same level, there would be less money going into the pot per se for spending in education. I think that's the reality of it. So we can by all means be united in our criticism of the Council of Ministers and their cuts programme, but simply the choice we have today is that if we don't allow the Minister to go ahead with something that's already been agreed, there will be even less money in the pot for education. That's a stark reality. I was also prompted to speak when I heard the word there'll be a flood into the secondary schools, because indeed there has been a flood at Lekeneve School, but it's not by people leaving the private sector to come and be educated at Lekeneve. It's because they haven't been able to maintain the roof satisfactorily, and there's been a literal flood when the sun's been beating down on it, and then the cracks appear in the roof and the rain, and the tiles fall through. So there may not even be a school there to house these children into the future. And we do need investment in the state sector. And that is an issue. I don't know if today is the day to have a debate on the education system. I don't think it is, sir. But in so much as it relates to the way we fund our education system, I've heard people saying we're tinkering around the edges here. And I've put it on record in the past that I'm very concerned, for example, that the only provision for a sixth form in the state sector, in the truly non-fee-paying sector, we only have one in Jersey, and that's called Holia. We have some very good stuff going on, very good work and vocational, etc., going on at Highlands. But if you want a free education in Jersey, something which I think even this government still believe is correct, 4 to 18 education should be free, why is there only one school in Jersey, but there's actually 4 or 5 options if you're willing to pay for it? That seems very strange, a strange balance in the current climate. I think it is right to make comparisons with other jurisdictions. We know that Jersey has roughly a 50% split when it comes to fee-paying and non-fee-paying, compared to some 8% versus 92% in the UK, and no doubt figures will vary along those lines in our other neighbouring countries. And I think stark questions will need to be made about whether or not people have private education, whether they look after themselves, or whether we have collective accountability when it comes to educating all of our students in the island. Let's remember, I don't want to conflate the issues, but this does come a day after we've had a very significant report that's just been published, which talks about the divisions in societies and what happens when you actually neglect the poorer quartiles in society. If you have money in Jersey, you're okay. You can function quite well. For those of us and for those out there who don't, things can be very difficult, and they're the ones that get neglected. And what I see and what I know from the Jersey context is that this Assembly doesn't like revolution. And when a previous education minister tried to do something much more audacious than this, by actually seriously redressing the balance between the private and the public schools, he had to take the knives out of his back from the then Council of Ministers, many of whom couldn't support it, even though he was moving in a direction which ostensibly they supported initially. And it was too much for the Assembly at the time as well, to the point where I think he had to resign, if I remember. Or he didn't last in the job anyway. Now, which one is it? Are we going to have incremental change in this? Are we going to have radical change? I mean, we could say, no, if you want to be private schools, you get no funding from government. That's your choice. Our job is to provide a fully funded public education system, and if you don't want to be part of that, then that's fine. You make your own provisions, as we might do for healthcare, etc. And that's a reasonable stance for any government to take. But that's not the stance that they've taken, or that indeed we are taking. We're just saying, look, there needs to be some recalibration here. And of course we hear people saying, well, I've got to work 2 jobs, I really can't afford it, I'm working 2 jobs to put my children into this private education. Why? Why would you do that when we have some very good state schools in Jersey? If the pinch point is that critical for those individuals, and I no doubt there are out there, if you can't afford, for example, the 5,000 odd pounds that it costs to send your child to JCG, and you live in the west of the island, why don't you send your child to Lekeneve School once it's got its new roof, and save yourself £5,000, maybe work a few less hours and spend more time with your children? I'm sure they would appreciate it, and I'm sure you would appreciate it too. And most people, I don't think, are necessarily on that marginal point either. There are people out there who can well afford it, and the reason they have fee-paying education is because they know it's worth it. The advantages and the perks that you get later on in life from putting your children through those colleges when they apply for jobs, etc. in the island, it pays off. It pays off. So I think I'm going to leave the comments there. I've been prompted to speak by Deputy Martin, and I'm not for one moment saying that every parent in that sector is rolling in money, but I'm saying that there are some very good schools that we have outside who make provision for truly comprehensive education, including for those with disabilities, and then truly comprehensive education. And I don't know why we haven't got an 11 to 18 school in Jersey, or indeed a 5 to 18 school. I've spoken to headmasters in Jersey, and they've said it's very divisive, the system that we've got, which is selective at the age of 11, it's selective at the age of 14, and then at the age of 16, children can, if they want to, or young adults can go to Holier and maybe be, again, with some of their peer group. And there's a lot to be said, of course, for the Holier system, but is this really the best way of doing education in what remains a relatively small island? These are no doubt questions for another day. But are we really saying that these modest changes that are being put forward by the Education Minister, which have already been agreed, and of course which he is obliged to come back to the Assembly to pass, are going to break the bank and cause all of this social shift into the state schools? And if it does mean that people are moving into the state schools, then let's accommodate them and increase the funding accordingly to that. I would like to see more input from wider varieties, certainly in Lekeneve School and other state schools in the island.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Bree.
Thank you very much, sir. I have sat here and listened to various arguments being put forward, and the same old prejudices are being trotted out. Prejudices which have no validity whatsoever. But I really want to talk about what the Minister for Education said was the vision. I don't know whether any other members recall, but at the beginning of this particular term, we sat here and we listened to the Council of Ministers' strategic plan as put forward by the Chief Minister. And it was all about investment. And one of those key investment stones was education. Well, I'm sorry. What is being put forward today is not investment, it is a cut. Now, if we are going to invest in education, which I think we need to, it's not about the building. It's not about the concrete that you're putting up. It's about the teachers and the pupils. That's what needs investment in. And I think it needs to be thought of very hard whether you are going to vote to cut funding to education. And I'm also slightly concerned about where the Minister's policy is taking us, because if you think back, we had the whole debacle about nursery funding a little while ago. But what was that aimed at? Private nurseries. This is aimed at private or public-private fee-paying schools. Now, I would hate to think that the Minister has a prejudice against any form of private education, because I don't think that is the case. But if you keep on picking away at private education, and you keep on making it more difficult for parents to have a choice, then that, in my opinion, sir, is completely wrong. Now, the impact as well is a word that the Minister has used. Let us go back and look at why do people choose to send their children to fee-paying schools? Because therein, I think, lies the heart of this argument. The reason that most people send their children to fee-paying schools is because they can just about afford to do it. And the difference between, in my opinion, the level of education and academic qualification in the private or fee-paying schools is so much better than the state schools. I would wish that we did have, as Deputy Tadjer said, a state school that went from 5 to 18. That you actually had a state school that would take pupils all the way through to A-level. But we don't. And that is why a lot of parents choose to send their children to fee-paying schools. And it is not rich people who send their children there. It is hard-working parents. My father went there. His father scrimped and saved and made the decision to only have one child. I went there, and my father scrimped and saved to send me there. My son went there, and I scrimped and saved to send him there, because I could just afford it. And I believed in the public-private partnership that made those schools work. In my opinion, sir, it is the government that is trying to undermine that partnership that has served this island so well and worked so well for so many years. And to make this comparison to UK fee-paying schools is completely spurious. They are a completely different animal to what we have over here. Just for example, they have much smaller class sizes. Their teacher-to-pupil ratio is much, much better, and the facilities that they provide are much, much better as well. And I am surprised that the Minister for Education does not know the difference. Now, we have been told that if we do not improve these cuts to the fee-paying schools, then the cuts will have to be put elsewhere on other schools or other facilities. And I find that slightly heavy-handed, because you have a budget in the MTFP. We voted the MTFP in, and we are saying, yes, we as a States Assembly, the majority was voted in. But education is not just about money. It's not. And if we fall into that trap of equating a pupil to a amount of money, then we have lost sight of what real education is about. And I am concerned that that is what's happening. That the future of our children is being determined by an accountant. And I would urge the Minister to go back, to withdraw this proposition and find another way of doing it, because this is not right. And I'm also concerned, I have to say, and Deputy Martin already referred to it, was the scrutiny report, the comments that they make. I read it, and I was reading through it quite closely, thinking, the scrutiny panel do not support this. And I then got to the very end of it, and the words, the panel reluctantly accepts that the proposition is in order. I've never seen that, reluctantly accepts, in any scrutiny report or comment before, although I am relatively new to this Assembly. And it did worry me that this scrutiny panel had not had the chance or ability to be totally subjective in their view, because there was the, if you like, threat there that unless this happened to fee-paying schools, state schools will lose out. And that is not a position we should ever find ourselves in. If we are going to invest in education, then let us do so. And I would suggest that by reducing the amount of money that is given to fee-paying schools reduces the ability of some parents to have that choice. And when you provide me with a state's education system that matches everything that the private fee-paying schools can provide, then we don't need to subsidise private fee-paying schools anymore. So I would urge members to think very long and hard about this and ask themselves, what does investment in education actually mean? Thank you, sir.
Deputy Sir John.
Thank you, sir. And following that speech from Deputy Bree, I think it's appropriate for me to stand as a member of the scrutiny panel. And I'm going to be objective, because that's our role as a scrutiny panel. Now, if members recollect, the scrutiny panel have said time and time again the fact that this government are not investing appropriately in the education. The scrutiny panel stated that in 2015 on the first MTFP, and also their amendment was approved by the States Assembly on that basis. In 2016, on the addition to the MTFP, again, they did the figures, and because of statutory requirements of the Education Minister, he had to put a large proportion of that investment in, because otherwise he wouldn't be meeting his obligations as the Minister under law. That leaves very little room to wiggle. The wiggle room lies in the Jersey Premium. And that's what this States Assembly approved in the MTFP. That's the investment that this Assembly has given to education, whether it's fee-paying or non-fee paying. And I'd like to get away from this discussion about who's better than who else, because this is the problem with our education system. We allow us to be divisive. We allow us to be selective, and it's absolutely wrong. And from my point of view, and I had this discussion with the panel yesterday, I actually reluctantly agreed to the comments of the scrutiny panel, because we've been put in an extremely difficult position where, you know, when you've done that work looking at the numbers for education, you've made the arguments time and time again as an objective panel to state that we are not actually making the investment that this government claims they are, to then be told, well, to actually know, to have seen the figures, that if we don't do this particular proposition, if we don't make this particular saving, that the savings will come from elsewhere in the education system. Namely, there's be teaching assistants, teachers, and all those areas within the education department, because they have literally been ripped down to the wire. And I think it's absolutely shameful for us to stand here and start arguing that we should be investing in education because this is for fee-paying schools, when we should have been arguing about this from dot one. We should be having a debate about what kind of education system we want, what kind of future we want for our children. And I'm sorry, sir, but yes, I do support this. Why? Because I am not going to support having more funding taken away from where's already been stripped in schools. And if the council minister, if this State Assembly agree for this to be rejected, I'm more than happy, and I will work with my colleagues on the panel as well, to bring forward a proposal to make the government invest in education, to take the money out of contingencies, to take the money out of other departments, or even raise taxes, because apparently this State's Assembly wants to invest in education. If that's the case, then let's do it, instead of giving it words and not action.
Deputy Trinity.
Thank you, sir. And I'm very pleased to follow the Deputy of St John's. And I'd like to go back to what Deputy Bree said about the choices that parents make. I would like to think that all parents make the choice of sending a child to school, wherever, for the right school for the child, that they do put the child first for the right school, whether it's state school, private school, or whatever. Because every education matters to all children, whichever school they are in. But to find savings in any department, and this is down to the brass tacks, it's always a challenging issue. Where do you look? What should be included, should not be included? But the mantra has always been education. And the aim, quite rightly, is to protect the core services. But no stone should be left unturned. Every area should be looked in, and to see if savings could be found. This area includes, obviously, music service, libraries, newly qualified teachers. How could any service be more effective? And also, we need to ask the question, does education need to do things like every department needs to be asked? And there's also, those are very important questions. And we've all been part of that lean process. But all areas had to include the fee-paying schools. And these adjustments, as we know, were put in the NTFP2 last year, that period of 2017-19. And sir, just to remind members, they were approved by this Assembly. It's not easy to find savings anywhere, and I can understand some parents' concerns. All schools are valued, and they all play an important part in education. Education has a budget of approximately 105 million, and there has been some investment too, of approximately 2.8. And the areas where it has gone, and I'd like to think that all the Assembly would agree to that, is in the area of, especially of vulnerable children. The Jersey Premium, to achieve higher standards with those who aren't coping very well. To improve standards across the board so all students can achieve their full potential. Also, 2 million was put in higher education. At present, all fee-paying schools receive either a grant or subsidy to the region of over 9 million, plus some fiscal stimulus funding too, which they've had. But it was also, there's some other things too. The schools, all the schools, work well with the education department in other ways too. They are part of the training, DBS, safeguarding, and they work as part of a team of all schools across the island. So the savings target is 600,000 over 2 years, starting next year. Next year, so we're mindful of the final financial pressures that some families might be facing. The amount which was approved has been 1.5 each year for 2 years. But if the schools pass on the savings to parents, it's about £3.20 per week per child. Consultation with all schools have taken place, and we know it's taken place with scrutiny as well. But that doesn't just finish there. The consultation does continue and will continue, because it's all one part of the education system that educates all our children. We also need to make sure that the savings are fair, sustainable, and efficient. The Minister has given an undertaking that there will be no further savings during this period. All schools, including private schools, as I said, play an important part in educating our children for the future so that they can reach the potential and play a full part in society. And I think I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the teachers for the important job they have in our children's lives. Sir, this savings is appropriate. A savings of 600, which will be reinvested in the frontline children's service, children's education. It's already been approved by this Assembly. If it's not approved today, the savings, unfortunately, will have to come from somewhere else within that education budget. I urge members to support this proposition.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Andre?
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to follow the previous speaker because she'd be delighted to know that I do agree with some of the points she made, particularly the comments she made about the teachers and how we should be supporting them. One I also congratulate on her speech is she managed to get two key buzzwords in there. One was the key thing about reinvesting, it's always a lovely expression to get in, and the other one was about savings. These are savings of 600,000. I'd like to turn it around and say these aren't savings, these are a tax. And I'll get to the point as to why and why I think there are therefore some consequences that may come out of this, because that's my key concern on where these charges or this tax goes. If we keep increasing the cost to parents who already pay partially for their children to go to a fee-paying school, there will at some point be a cut-off where more of those parents will either leave the fee-paying schools and go to the state sector, or will just not go to the fee-paying sector in the first place. To answer Deputy Tadio's question as to why, I think partially it's about choice. Partially it is about, for example, this is not the only reason, it's about the ability to send their child to a faith-based school. The state doesn't offer that as an option. And parents are willing to go to the extra measure, also the reasons outlined by Deputy Bree, to give their children, if they can, that choice. What I would like to do is draw members' attention to, it's actually page 6 of the proposition, which is this, for those of you in black and white, it will be a dark grey and a light grey graph. In my proposition, it's a browny, bluey thing. The point being, so everyone looks at that graph, one will see actually the proportions that parents are already contributing in terms, this is on page 6 of the proposition, sir, the proportions that parents are already contributing to the education of their child. And bearing in mind, if they are taxpayers, which I would imagine is likely to be the case, they are already paying for the education of their child, because that is actually what tax relates, partially tax pays for, because that is what funds the non-fee paying schools. So those parents would argue that they are already, I will say, paying twice. So there's a question, because it does sometimes come through in certain terminology as to who is subsidising who. The parents would argue that they are subsidising, or let's say saving, the states considerable sums of money because they are not imposing their children on the state sector. As the point was made, if everybody left the fee-paying sector, I think one would have about 3,000 extra pupils that they would have to cope with. And that has a significant cost attached to it. There is certainly a view, an expression being I believe it was portrayed to scrutiny, that about a 5% shift of pupils, and to put that into context, if it was Dullasol Primary School, that would be 10 pupils. A shift of about 5% would be enough to knock out the costs, the so-called savings that are going to be achieved by this proposition. The Minister implies that the schools don't have to pass on these changes to their grant to parents. And I think that's a bit, I'm not allowed to use the word disingenuous these days, so am I? I think it's a bit contradictory. Because the schools, certainly one of the schools that certainly made the submission has made it very clear that they have already cut, as far as they can see, as far as they can, their operational costs. And I make the point, so the abbreviation is the ARPU, I think it is, it's the average weighted, whatever it is, cost per pupil. That is based on the part of the cost to the states of educating a child. But it does actually already exclude things like IT, HR administration, and other support costs. So the fee-paying schools are already not getting the ratio that's being, or the equation that's being applied to them is not the full cost of educating a child to the state, or the states, plural. And actually, if the Education Department is making the savings it's going to be talking about, then that ratio, that ARPU rate, is going to drop anyway because their costs of teaching children in the non-fee-paying sector will reduce. And therefore, the grant that will go to the fee-paying schools will automatically reduce as well. The proposition, or the report to the proposition also talks about the savings that the state schools have had to make. It talks about 1.2 million. Now, I appreciate there are always concerns about averaging, but that's about 14 million, or actually, sorry, if we do it for 3 years, the MTFP, that's just under £45,000 a school. The fee-paying sector with this will be just under £68,000 a school. So there is already a significant difference being applied to the fee-paying sector versus the non-fee-paying sector in the level of savings that they are having to achieve. And let's be clear, in both fee-paying schools, in fee-paying schools, there will be parents who can easily afford the changes, no question. But in the same way, there will be parents in the state sector who could easily afford to pay school fees. But they choose to send their children to the state sector for whatever reason. And so to use the terminology that sometimes we get in these kind of debates or elsewhere, the taxpayer subsidises those parents 100%, and there's no argument about it. And that's why parents at the fee-paying schools are concerned that they are seen to become an easier and easier target by these kind of measures, because it's only £3.20 a week, or whatever the number is. Now, if we put that into context, I'm going to use the scenario of parents with 2 children, so it's about £330 a year. Now, my take on an average tax bill, that's between 5 and 7% increase in their tax bill that we're talking about. Now, there's this lovely expression of Middle Jersey, and I would argue that the people one is hitting there is the Middle Jersey element. The people who will be, to use Deputy Bree's expression, scrimping and saving to get their children into the fee-paying schools because they want that particular choice, whether it's because of faith reasons or because of other reasons. And I would suggest that, bearing in mind a 5 to 7% increase in your tax bill over and above everything else that is coming through could be enough over time for people to start making changes in those choices. What I'm not keen about is certainly there is a comparison and it's an inference. You know, it says in the report that I think that, just looking for it, there is a difference of 143% in the independent schools in the UK compared to the Jersey fee-paying schools. I think Deputy Markham has already very well addressed that. One is not comparing like with like in terms of the opportunities and the style of the schools that we're teaching. But that mantra comes out, and that justifies the increases. And we had talks about all-inclusive society and all that type of thing. For me, it's about parents having choices, and it's about the ability for those who couldn't ordinarily afford to take part in that choice. And I would suggest that this kind of proposition starts moving away from certain parents having that choice. Sorry, sir. I was just looking for the scrutiny comments, because they did identify a couple of things. Obviously, as I said, we've had the reference of if there was a 5% shift in pupils to the non-fee-paying sector, that would wipe out the savings, is believed. I did pick up a point, though.
Sir, would the Speaker give way?
No, sir. It does actually say in the report, I will accept that's a representation that was made to the panel, but the report does actually state that the panel, or it, and I presume that relates to the panel, it therefore questions whether the figures reflect the reality of the savings envisaged. But I think actually what was more important, in a way, again, it's about the states, or rather the council ministers, doing things that the states have actually previously agreed and set out. That may be a theme I'll come back to in another debate or another area at some future point. And the then Senator Shenton lodged P72 2011, and that had two parts to it. We've heard the comments about the green and white papers, and it's very clear that that hasn't happened, that work hasn't been done, even though that was a decision made by a previous assembly, and the department and the council ministers seem to have conveniently ignored that. And that in itself should be enough to actually reject this, because the ministers have not done what a previous assembly told them they should do. I won't read out the propositions. If anybody queries that, I do have it to hand. So, sir, I think my concern is, as I said, is the unintended consequences and also the start of the moving away from this ratio that was previously there of 50% for secondary and 25% grant for the primary side. We are shifting that away. That makes it easier for somebody in the future to come back and change it. I fully accept that the minister has no intention to do any changes. The minister is only there until some date just after, I think it's the 16th of May 2018. That's less than a year away. I have no idea if he's standing again. I have no idea if he'll be re-elected or not if he is standing again. And I have absolutely no idea if he'll be minister. So therefore, any future minister will not be bound by those undertakings. And depending on the financial pressures, then it becomes a lot easier to take another little tranche of that grant that is given to the fee-paying schools. And so, really, I would suggest, sir, that number one is that schools risk being hit twice. Number one, by firstly, this direct reduction in the grant, and secondly, by the future reductions in the ARPU rate upon which their grant is already based. And therefore, sir, that will have an impact on parents. And therefore, that is then a slow erosion of choice. And actually, it will be people who do have greater difficulty in affording the fees they already pay. And that, to me, as I said, is the kind of Middle Jersey label. And that's really what we've always been about, is trying to help those people and give choice. And it is a little bit about continuity and community and consistency. And that's so, sir, as we've heard, it is not possible within the state sector to go from, I'll say, age 6, I might be wrong here, all the way through to age 18. But when the fee-paying sector gives that choice, and that actually allows children who are going through what actually is their formative years, which will be stressful, you know, standing back from it, it's all inconsequential now, but it's all those dramas and stresses of that time, particularly GCSEs and A-levels, and they are able to build up a peer group which is supportive, enables them to go through that. Within the state's state sector, we don't provide that. One has to change. One has to change that peer group. And so one is, because one's got to stop after GCSEs, if one wants to do A-level, one has to change schools. So for me, sir, as I said, that is what we're risking here is we're starting to damage that model, and we're starting to damage the choice that parents have, and effectively we are again imposing a further cost on parents, on taxpayers, and on parents who probably are less able to afford some of these changes. And these cumulative impacts are then going to start having changes in behaviour, which could ultimately just increase the costs to the taxpayer ultimately. On that basis, I will not be supporting the proposition, and I really do ask members not to as well, sir.
So could I seek some clarification from the previous speaker that he wasn't seeking to infer that the scrutiny panel calculated themselves that a 5% move from the fee-paying schools would negate the savings, but that was estimated by a submission to ourselves. It was not our calculation.
So I think I did clarify that it was a representation made to the committee when I was speaking, sir.
Does another member wish to speak on the proposition? I call on the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. And I stand here very pleased as an Education Minister to hear such an informed debate. We've had maths lessons, we've had English lessons, we've had lessons about all things to do with this particular proposition, and we seem to have meandered all over the place and gone in all sorts of different directions. But I'm very pleased and I'm very thankful that everybody that has, to everybody that has spoken, because I do think these matters need consideration. And I won't address everybody that's spoken because I think there was quite a bit of repetition, but I just want to go through a few points. First of all, I would say in relation to the discussion from Deputy Le Fondre just finished regarding publications of white and green papers, I think the proposition P72 or the one that related to the previous Senator Shenton, actually says in it, at the current levels, pending publication of the forthcoming education white paper. So he was not suggesting in that we should produce white and green papers. He was simply saying that pending a publication of the white paper in this particular instance, back when it was decided. And I believe that publication was done. So I'm a little bit mystified as to what that means. But it's not something that we embark on now. White and green papers, I think Deputy Dublé said, aren't used as often as they are. Consultations have changed that. But first of all, I'd like to thank Deputy Dublé and Deputy Mezek in particular, because they sort of highlighted the real point of this proposition, which is that what we're trying to do here, and we did get bogged down in the maths lesson from the Constable Taylor, Constable of St. John, which sort of took us off at a different tangent, I think, and sort of moved us away from where we were trying to be. What we're trying to do here is, as has been said by many of the members, is go back to the decisions that were made in the MTFP. It was in there. I'm sorry that Deputy Martin didn't find it or didn't read it at the time, but it was in there that we were contemplating this reduction, and it was way back then that we were telling schools, heads of schools, that this was a consideration that they needed to take account of. Again, as I said before, we try to be as transparent and as open as we possibly can, and to give schools and parents as much time as possible to make considerations about what they do with the education of their children. And so, to go back to the point that was made, the proposition in itself relates to the action. The report itself relates to the impact, and I think that's kind of where the confusion started to lie. Excuse me while I move some papers around. this is simply about reducing the funding of the average weight pupil unit, or as we call it in education, ORPU. We are reducing that over 2 years period by 3%. The effect of that is the bit that's in the report here, and it shows you all the way to the back. When you're talking, as Deputy Knowles said, about figures like this in the situation where there is a fluctuation, and the fluctuation in this particular case is the number of pupils that move around our education system, there are going to be differences. So it's not an exact science. And so you can't sit and say simply, if this is 3%, then it equates to 6%, which equates to a figure. And I do take on board what Deputy Lafondre and Constable of St John said, you know, in terms of what we're looking at here. They're quite right. 3% of 50% is 6%, and the 3% of 25, I'm starting to sound like one of the Marx brothers now, and the 3% of 25% is 12%. But the full effect is that we're simply reducing the funding of the ORPU by 3%. That's it. And the figures that we've given at the back of the paper on page 9 are an indication, and as Deputy Knowles says, a target of what we're hoping to achieve. It's not a fine science. It's not the exact figure. So we're hoping, in terms of what we've got, and we know that pupils' figures move, to hit that target. So going back to some of the other things, I think there is a bigger discussion to be had with education on this island. I've said many times that if I was to contemplate a blank sheet of paper, rather like some of the previous speakers, I would contemplate a different education system. But when you are in the situation that I am, that's inherited this, I have to tell every member, you have one of the best education systems that I've been welcome to see around the world, not just in Jersey and not just in the UK. It is fantastic. And the Constable of St John said right at the beginning, and I totally agree with him, that this is not so much about the funding, it's all about the teachers and the pupils. I totally agree. And we have some fantastic teachers and some fantastic pupils. And it's been my privilege as a deputy to serve as an education minister and to try and make sense of the system that we have. And what I try to do is constantly limit the impact on parents where I can, make sure that the system that we produce is the best available, and do that in the best way that is possible. I'm not trying to undermine. I'm not trying to take cuts and I think somebody was saying I'm acting as an accountant. Not at all. And in fact, if you're ever in the Council of Ministers when I'm surrounded by my fellow ministers, my argument quite often, I can see the Chief Minister smiling, is that occasionally they walk into account speak, and I just say, look, this isn't it. This is about people, and we're actually dealing with people's lives here. So I'm very aware of the situation that I find myself in. I'm very sorry that I'm having to make these savings, but they have to be made, and I think we've done them in the least impactful way possible. I'm not picking on private schools because these cuts or these savings have been made right across the board. And again, it's in the proposition. You can see the savings that we've made in the state sector. So this is actually being about fair and passing that responsibility right across the board. So I've got not too much more to say about these particular different things. Let's see if this covered everything. I'm more than happy, as I say, to have another bigger discussion about what we can do in education, and I'm more than happy to sit down with Scrutiny and work with them to see if we can effectively change for the better the system that we have. But I have to say, I think it's an absolutely fantastic system. So for my part, I want to maintain choice. I think it's paramount. I won't be coming back for more. I've said that several times. This is it. This is just the one saving that we have to make. I have tried to limit the impact. It's just 3%, and it starts in 2018, and it runs to 2019, and that's it. I've attempted to create a fair playing field. And it's true. It's absolutely true, as Deputy Dublé and Deputy Mezek have said, and Deputy Tadier, and others. If we don't make the savings here, we have to make them elsewhere, and that would create an unfair playing field. It has already been agreed in the MTEP, and today it's about actually defining that statement and that decision and making sure that we move forward and create the best education system that we can. And I ask for...
Call for the appel. The appel is called for. Invite members to return to their seats. Ask the greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of voting. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 35 votes for, 9 votes contra, no abstentions.
Those voting contra, the Connétables of St Saviour and St John, Deputies Martin, Grouville, Lafondre, Kevin Lewis, Rondell, Bree and MacDonald.
Thank you, sir. Can I just thank members for that decision? I think it's a very emotional one, and I think they've made the right decision. Thank you.
The next item is the draft amendment number 31 of the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
Draft amendment number 31 of the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey. The States, in pursuance of Article 48 of the States of Jersey Law 2005, have made the following amendments to the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey.
Chairman.
Yes, could I ask Deputy Morton to act as rapporteur for the committee, sir?
Yes, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Most of these amendments come from work that was done by the Standing Orders and Internal Procedures Subcommittee. I sat on that committee with Senator Roseff, and all this work was complete before Senator Roseff left PPC, and I thank him for working with me. And I would also like to thank the Assistant Greffier and the previous Assistant Greffier, who I think is just on leave, for being our officers on this and trying to get us together, which sometimes proved very hard. We have also had a presentation to States members, and all these amendments to standing orders came when we first went out as a new committee and asked what members would like to see changed in standing orders, what they thought worked, what didn't. And not everything is in these amendments. There are a few more to come, like the one, it's nearly ready, but it's the one Deputy Southern preempted and brought about answers to questions that they should be relevant to the question, and that will be coming soon. There is one that is not covered by PPC, and I say this now, sir, because a lot of states, I say a lot, probably half a dozen states members have approached the subcommittee, and it is about secret ballots. Now, we have not found a consensus on PPC, and it's not here. So I say that now, sir, so if anyone wants to direct PPC, bring it to the House, test it, then it will have to come through PPC. But it won't be brought unless a backbencher does that, sir. So that is all I want to say on that one. So the first amendment, sir, is to Standing Orders 9, 11 and 12, and it's about who may be asked a question. The change will allow questions to be addressed to assistant ministers with delegated areas. It will not stop the minister answering it, but we have a lot of assistant ministers who have real responsibilities in delegated areas, and we now have to ask the minister, and if he wants to, he can delegate it. It will not stop the minister answering it, but I will stress to states members, please, please, when submitting your oral questions, stipulate. Do you want this answered by the minister? It will be. And if you want it answered by the assistant minister, it will be, under the new standing order, sir. So that's those standing orders. Amendment 2. The next amendment is to Standing Order 21. It isn't something the subcommittee did look at, but it comes from the amendment from Standing Orders earlier we agreed this year from Deputy Wickington, that he proposed to ensure propositions are accompanied by a statement saying whether collective responsibility applied or not. In hindsight, we have realised that the wording that's there now means that this should apply to all propositions. This amendment put this back into Council of Ministers' propositions and not backbenchers. Amendment 3 is, the following amendment is to Standing Order 68A, and will mean that any assistant minister will be able to act as rapporteur for propositions lodged by the Council of Ministers or the Chief Minister. At the moment, this is not possible, and it has, in the past, proved somewhat difficult. Just for an example, sir, the economic development, tourism, yes, I've got an abbreviation, tourism, sports and culture, has delegated responsibility in an assistant minister for culture. So if the Council of Ministers brought a proposition or a new culture strategy, at the moment the assistant minister with delegated responsibility for that area could not bring it. because he's in the wrong area. But this will allow him to, and I'm sure that everyone would be very glad. That was just an example, sir. And Amendment 4 is the amendment to Standing Order 68A, and will allow propositions lodged by members in their own name to be made by somebody else. We have already made this provision in relation to amendments. The member will have to give notice to the greffier that they are going to be absent by 9:30 on the day the proposition would be taken. This amendment will only apply when a member is ill or out of the island unexpectedly, or their excused attendance. This doesn't happen. This won't happen very much, but sometimes, and you know, when it's near an end of a session, or like my colleagues behind me, they have a party they cannot lodge at the moment in their own name. But if one of them's away, they all in agreement, they can then debate a proposition in someone else's name. It doesn't stop the Council of Ministers already doing that, so we haven't changed that one. Now, the next amendment is probably maybe a contentious one, but we have discussed it, and we think that States members, when they saw it, agreed. And it relates to the election of Chief Ministers, Ministers, Chairman of PPC, PAC, Overseas Aid, and that is Standing Orders 116 all the way through to 112. It will mean, sir, that if there's only one candidate for a position, they will have to make a speech, 10 minutes, and they will have to answer questions for 20 minutes. We found that this may stop people just jumping up at the last minute and deciding that they want to put themselves in. They don't really want the job, sir, but they want to tease out the policy of the person who is being put forward by the Chief Minister. And they will answer questions. So we all know this happens. It happened to me once, sir, in 2011. So I got a phone call overnight and I was asked to stand as the Home Affairs Minister. I nearly got the job. I think I was 4 votes out. Whew. But as I say, sir, people are asking me to do it because they wanted to hear the views of a minister who was put forward and had already done the job for 3 years. So we hope that this will... we're not stopping it. We hope every election is contested and everyone really wants the job that they go for. So I hope that isn't too contentious, but we wait and see. And sir, the last amendment is a very small one, and it does not come out of any of the work from the subcommittee. It just changes a reference to the scrutiny panel currently chaired by Deputy of St Mary. It is called the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Panel, but at the moment Standing Order 135 still refers to technical service, even though the name of both the Minister and the panel have changed. This amendment, sir, the last smaller one, corrects that position, and sir, I make the proposition and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Is the proposition seconded? Does any member wish to speak on the proposition, the individual amendments? Senator Rosen.
So can I just say that it was an absolute pleasure to sit on a panel of 2 with Deputy Martin, of which there was one member with a casting vote, which was the chairman, which was Deputy Martin.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Very well. Do you wish to respond to that, Deputy?
Well, just to thank the Senator for his compliment and ask for the appel, sir.
The appel is called for. These are being voted on block. It would be open to anyone to seek an individual vote if they wanted to. We'll take the vote on block. The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. I'll ask the greffier to open the voting. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 42 votes for, no votes contre, no abstentions. Now, the next item of public interest is the Jersey Ethical Care Charter, P48. Deputy, I received notification that you wish this moved to the next.
Yes, sir. I was going to ask for it to be taken this session, but having caught rumours of the consternation that it caused in the various departments, I've decided it can wait until next session. I was just worried that I get caught in the logjam, which is God knows how many days it's going to, heaven knows how many days it's going to take us to clear that. But it's likely to be at P48, likely to be early-ish in the agenda, so therefore will get debated in appropriate time.
Then the final item of public business is the draft Dormant Bank Accounts Jersey Law 2017 Appointed Day Act, lodged by the Chief Minister. I ask the Greffier to read the proposition.
Draft Dormant Bank Accounts Jersey Law 2017 Appointed Day Act. The states, in pursuance of Article 31(2) of the Dormant Bank Accounts Jersey Law 2017, have made the following act.
Chief Minister.
So I wonder if I could ask Senator Routier to present this item.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members will be aware of the Dormant Bank Accounts Jersey Law 2017, which was adopted by this Assembly on the 28th of June last year. It was sanctioned by order of Her Majesty in Council on the 15th of February this year and was registered by the Royal Court on the 24th of February this year. So this is the Appointed Day Act to bring the law into force. The law establishes, as members will know, a fund to be known as the Jersey Reclaim Fund and introduces a regime for notification and subsequent transfer to the Jersey Reclaim Fund of monies in accounts held in Jersey banks which have been dormant for at least 15 years. Eventually, monies transferred under the regime can be used for charitable purposes and potentially to cover the costs of the Charities Commissioner. The effect of the Appointed Day Act is to bring into force the law on the 17th of July, with the exception of Article 20. I'll just touch on Article 20 because that deals with the distribution of the monies in the Jersey Reclaim Fund and requires that a corresponding order be made appointing an independent organisation to determine the charitable recipients of any funds arising and to make distributions to them. The order must also set out policies and procedures for determining whether to make any distribution from the fund, and if so, the amounts that must be distributed for the purposes of this article. It is intended that Article 20 will be brought into force by a further Appointed Day Act in the autumn of this year, once we have a better idea of the likely size of the Jersey Reclaim Fund as a result of the returns that the banks will make pursuant to the various provisions that will be brought into force now. It is only once we have some idea of the size of the fund that the policies and procedures required by Article 20 in respect of distributions can be settled and a corresponding order made. So our officers have had a good and regular communication with the Economic Affairs Scrutiny Panel, and we are particularly discussing the contents of the order that will be made under Article 20 of the law. That process will continue into the autumn, and we are grateful for the constructive dialogue with the panel. So I propose the principles of the proposition.
Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Senator Ferguson.
Yes, sir. I didn't have the advantage of being in the Assembly when the original proposition was debated. I wonder if the rapporteur could tell me where the account will be administered and who will actually hold the funds.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Call on Senator Routier to respond.
Thank you, sir. The funds will be held within the Treasury Department, and then at a later stage, when it is decided when Article 20 is an appropriate time to bring that forward, it'll be then moved to a charitable organisation to make the distributions. So I maintain the proposition.
All members in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Those against? The proposition is adopted. That concludes public business. Before asking the chairman...
So, do I not have to do the articles?
No, it's an Appointed Day Act.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. May I, just before we do that then, I'd like to just say particular thank you to Senator Rosa, who did a lot of the initial work on this because it got us to where we are today.
Before asking the Chairman to deal with future business, members should have had distributed to them the typed version of the personal statement that Senator Balash made earlier today. Good. And I can announce that the following proposition has been lodged: Bailiff of Jersey, cessation of dual roles in the appointment of an elected Speaker of the States, is lodged by Deputy Taddy today. Very well, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, sir. Arranging the public businesses as per the consolidated order paper. We have on Thursday the in-committee debate on the report of the Independent Jersey Care Inquiry, and I think it's been indicated this will take clearly at least one day, but maybe two, sir. And on the 18th of July, which is the last sitting of this present session, is as per the consolidated order paper, and that could be two, possibly 3 days. And I'm not sure of the date. You just mentioned the one you just mentioned, sir. The dual
Cessation
role.
of role. I just noted that it's lodged today. I'm not
Lodged
sure.
today, so it'll be the 17th of September, sir. Thank you.
Members agree on the arrangement for future business? Deputy Noel?
So, if I may test the mood of members, sir, I've lodged P57, which is down for debate in September, sir. I would like to take it early and lift standing orders, if at all possible, to the next sitting, because it really goes hand in glove with P38, which is liquid waste. It would tie my hand in any future minister's hands for DFI not to be able to bring in household charges for waste, be they liquid or solid. States members may want to have that debate first and in the bag, so to speak, prior to having the debate on P38, sir.
So, which proposition number was that, Deputy?
P57, sir. The approval of household, the state's approval required for household liquid or solid waste charges, sir.
Very well, Chairman, do you have any observations on that?
Sir, it seems to me, sir, that's rather an unnecessary request. It appears this proposition is asking for a debate, to have a debate if the Minister at some time in the future decides to do something. So I can't see the urgency of it, and we do already have a pretty full agenda for the next sitting, sir.
As I said, sir, it's just to give comfort to members to prevent myself or a future Minister from just making an order and bringing in household waste charges without the state's decision. It was a belt and braces, which we agreed to do with scrutiny.
Well, I suppose the question is, have you sufficiently tested the mood of the Assembly not to ask for that movement? Well, we approve the arrangements of future business as proposed, therefore, by the Chairman, and the States stands adjourned until 9:15 the day after tomorrow for the in-committee debate. 9:30, I beg your pardon.